Let's dance. Put on your red shoes and dance with me. Let's dance. Wild as the wind. Love me, let me do. Say you do, say you love me, do. Look at that old man go. Does he know he's in the best man show? Is there a hit? Does he know? Beating up the wrong man. Does he know? Is there life on Mars? David Bowie, happy birthday. He was not David Bowie. He was State to State, Ziggy Stardust, Heroes, Hunky Dory. He was art rock, glam rock, pop rock, electronic rock, experimental rock. David Bowie never stood still. He didn't just say, oh, I'm a rock star. I want to be famous and have lots of money. No. He was always out on the edge. He was always the man who fell to earth. He was always the proper soldier. Artist, musician, writer, actor, producer. A man who will be always remembered, just like Leonardo da Vinci, just like Newton, just like Vincent van Gogh. There will never be another David Bowie. Ever, ever again. And I will be glad to say that I knew him as a friend. Two minutes and nobody, I mean, you guys didn't even hear me sing. Ay, ay, ay. Love me, love me, love me, love me do. Love me like the wind you do. Love me, love me, love me, love me true. Hey there, wouldn't you know? Watching the prostitutes bring on the big show. Little did you know, is there life on Mars? Oh man, I just did the first, I hope, of a joint show with John Birmingham on his channel. And it's a show. It's his channel, but it's our show. All right? Let's see how well he can share. This show is going to be about the paranormal. So, and I got him to sit down on the couch and talk. And I let him be the star. And I would, lead him into telling him, help him so he could tell you the things that he sees. It's not about John Birmingham. Tonight here on Dreamy Dreamland, we're celebrating David Bowie. And I had a nice intro before you guys showed up. The lights were bright and I could read my notes. I sang some of his songs. You should go back and hear my voice. I kind of stress my voice. If you go look at the end of the chat I just did with John Birmingham on the paranormal, I basically was projecting a shamanic, energetic scream. And it comes from way down at the bottom of your toes. It's like when I lead you guys through the astral into state. And it's the reverse. It's like the when you eject all of your negativity into the Akashic record. I was doing that. I'm just letting it go. Right? And I was saying I wanted to let it all go so I could project right now on this show about David Bowie. Oh, my love for David Bowie as a friend. And so where do I start? I start with when I met David Bowie. And I met David Bowie when I was in prep school. I bought myself a Victrola that you could stack records on. And the records I bought was Joni Mitchell's album, Blue. Love that album. And David Bowie's Station to Station. And I would play those three over and over until I bought other records. And this is when I was at a prep school. Really, it was more like a jail. But that's where I love Station to Station. I love all of Bowie because every album he does is different. And the same with Joni Mitchell. Every album she does is different. And they are always putting themselves on the line. And Elton John and Bernie Taupin, I love his records because it's a team effort. Elton does the music and performs it. Bernie writes the lyrics. He's the poet. He's the bard. And why that partnership works so great was because they co-created in love. And they weren't lovers, I don't think they were anyway. And it stayed that way their whole careers. And that's why those songs were so great. Because it wasn't just Elton. It was Bernie Taupin, right? And their producer and all the rest. And all of those three artists, again, it was a team effort. Joni Mitchell, she was pretty much Joni Mitchell, but she did have a producer and an engineer, and she always had a muse. And that was amazing. Most guys have the muse. She had a muse. She always had a muse. Like, she went through all of those boys of Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, each, virtually all those songs that they sang and became famous, she wrote, like Woodstock. And all of her songs were about them, Man in Paris, all of that stuff. Right. So, and David Bowie, of those three, was the pinnacle of that. Because that guy, he never, Elton John was Elton John. Bernie Taupin wrote all these different songs, and Elton sang them as Elton John. Joni Mitchell was always Joni Mitchell. But every one of those albums was trying to express what she was going through at that time. But David Bowie, all through his career, he was pushing the envelope like I've never known any other artist to do because he just doesn't stick in music. He was an amazing painter and he was an amazing actor. He did a number like Man Who Fell to Earth, and the character he played that uh, like Satan guy in one of Jim Henson's films, right? Yes, well, I'm wearing these so I can read you guys. Mm, sure, born in 1950. But my YouTube and my blog, my email address, the Dude Awake 42. My Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob, and xratted.blogspot.com. All three were were done by adepts. I hung out in this library, and I would do the kind of show I do with you guys, but with a circle of my adepts were actually, like in the Iroquois Longhouse. The librarian set up a place in the library with these circle of very comfy library chairs and a table in the middle with a plug in it so you could plug your apparatuses into it. And it was down in the coffee house, and there was about 8 chairs around it. And I would show up around sometime between 9 and 11, and then I would hold court until 4. And because I had no money, no place to go, and the library was about so the guys who put that on there were people who, you need to be online. You need this, you need that. And they would come and say, here's your email address so people can get a hold of you. Here's your YouTube address so you can start doing this, that. You started sticking me up there. And the same thing with my blog, So all of those names came from, these other people. So I didn't tell them the name to put up there. They did, right? So anyway, that's a little bit of that history. But David Bowie is an amazing, and he is the man who fell to earth. He played a English soldier in the Bataan Death March, and he was up for an Academy Award for that. It's the first time he was in a movie. This guy was just so. That is who I fell in love with, and then in 1986, maybe, the store restarts. It's a long story of Sensei Al Bob as the electrician, as the artist, as the mystic, as the healer, as the anthropologist, as the shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist, right? So around 1986, I had been doing all of that. And it would take me, go back and watch some of the shows, of the Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. I'm pushing almost 200 of these live chats. And these stories I've got so many I can repeat the story. But since it's David Bowie's birthday, I'm going to this is a long playing version, just like that vinyl record that I bought, Station to Station. So I have to give you a little backstory. So grew up in New York, was the all of that. And one of the things I was the disco electrician, meaning I worked at the Fillmore East as the rock and roll electrician. And then I started working, wiring and building fancy restaurants, recording studios, rich people's lofts. And then I started doing nightclubs. And I worked on the Studio 54 I worked on my pièce resistance that I'm well known for, or famous, or infamous, or however you want to put it, was um, Zard. No. I can't believe I forgot the name of it, but it's on 34th Street near Times Square. Xenons, right? And I got that job because Mike Finelli, who was the grandfather, not godfather, not the grandfather, he was my grandfather, but the godfather of the mob between the two Little Italies on Spring Street. There's the one that's on the east side and the one on the west side. And he was the major godfather that controlled both of them. But there were two different crews, and he was the godfather of both of them. And he on Finelli's and Mercer, but on a Spring and whatever that cross street, Finelli's was right there. And it was his bar, and it was a speakeasy from back in the day, and it was a bar. And then it was a workers' bar because there were all these factories in Soho, right? And he had his little perch in his office behind it, and he had 3 dining rooms and the bar. And Mike Stahl, my electrical godfather, my mentor, the man who made me the electric mystery, the EMF mystery that I am. And Grandpa Stahl had the first master electrician's license in the United States. He started Local 3, the IBEW, Naboth and IATSE, right? And everyone knew him, and everyone owed him a favor. And he wired everything. He was Nikola Tesla's master electrician. He worked for Edison in the Edison power plant. He worked on every amazing thing. You know, Philadelphia experiment, the Chrysler building, Empire State Building, the Niagara Falls power plant, Manhattan Project, you name it, he was there. So I, when I got into all of these businesses through him, and I met Mike Finelli through Grandpa Stahl. And I had all of these amazing mentors and leaders of example for me who loved me and always put me in these amazing positions to do things, right? So I started building these nightclubs, and Booze did the garbage taking out and all the tablecloths. So, of course, I was the leading guy. So I had in 1986, there were about the Mud Club, Xenons, Tunnel Club, Kamikazes, Wetlands, Regimes, and 2 other nightclubs that will pop into my head. Danceteria. And Danceteria was great because it's over on 20-something Street. And that was where, in the 19th century, they had all of the department stores, right? And Danceteria was, really, right up there with Macy's. But they didn't call it. Might have even been the first Macy's. There were 6 floors. They had 4 elevators, and they were the bird cage type of elevators of the 19th century version. And so they had, and each of these floors was about 4,000 square foot, right? And then they had a big warehousey barn in the back. And all these guys did was, and there was 2 empty lots on either side of this building. People bought that and the 2 lots. And the 2 lots were for parking, and they put 2 fire staircases on either side of the building so they could have people, right? And they were cinder blocked, metal stairs, all these big doors to go from that floor out. These things, each of these staircases could unload a jumbo jet in 5 minutes. So, bottom line, after I built these things, I kept there as an artist. So I would do art shows in these aesthetic, but to keep people interested and they keep coming back. I had these art shows and these discos, and that was through collaborative artist projects that I helped start with people like Julian Schnabel, Judy Rifka, Kiki Smith, Richard Serra, and a number of others of pretty good art fame of the 70s and 80s. And so I was the dude. That's why I'm the dude awake, right? And so part of my job working, so I got a nice chunk of change for building all these things, but the building department and the fire department were pretty strict on all these nightclubs, especially when they started really hitting big in the 70s and 80s. And so they would do these, each of these clubs would get visited by the, building department or the fire department at least once a month. So I would come and visit each of these clubs before they opened. They all opened around 10. And I would cruise in and make sure everything worked and make sure all the safety stuff was up to snuff. And I basically, would hang out or have a drink or have a little nosh, because some of these clubs actually had a little place in the back you could eat for the VIPs. And I had all in pass. I could go anywhere, talk to anybody, be anything, because I was the dude. I was the man. I mean, the guy, I never had to wait online. I just kind of walked, and the guy would open the velvet rope for me and I would just go on. Hey, Al. And, because the owners of all these places, owed me, and as Grandma said, it's always better to live like a millionaire than be one. And Grandma had 28 rules. And one of the other 28 rules was, wherever to a room, you own it. And the other one of the 28 rules is never work for anyone who doesn't need you more than you need them. So they were like in business. Those were my three major rules there. So I could just walk in any of these clubs and have a good time or leave or stay. But as long as I checked everything and made sure that if those inspectors show up, because if anything was wrong, like if the panic door didn't work or the exit light didn't work for some reason, they'd shut it down. And those clubs, you shut it down for one night, they lose $20,000. When you have like 4,000 people in there and each one spending, $100. So I was, always taken care of, always paid well, always had a great time. And I always met really interesting people, and always found a girlfriend. And, this was, part of one of my, this was between my two wives. I had about a 4-year hiatus where, after being married to Donna, I said, who I met on the subway, and we traveled the world and did great things, but we kind of went our separate ways. And I loved her, and she wanted to be happy. She, going her separate way made her happy. That's what made me happy. Like when we got divorced, it cost me nothing, cost her nothing. And when we married, when we signed that paper, she was crying. She said, "But I don't want to leave you. I love you." I said, "Baby, I love you. But you want to tear this up? No problem. You want to keep, no problem. And I'll always be here for you. And all the women I've ever been with, I'm always here for them. And more than half of them are still my buddy. Still getting a phone call. Still, all the, they're married, grandparents, da 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 da. I'm still fondly remembered. And that's how I like it. I never split with anyone, in bad feelings. I never go to bed angry, and I never let anything get to that point of being angry. If I sense that I said, what's wrong? What did I do wrong? Tell me what's up. How can I fix this? And if you're always doing that, then you can't lose. I'm always doing well, because If I worry about all the things I could worry about, why, no. I'm always doing well, you know? I'm, you know, unleashing all of that angst at the end of John in Mind's paranormal, when I unleashed all that paranormal energy. And I did it for a reason, because tonight, after I talk a while and we get at least 15 or so people here, I will start the party at 33 minutes and 33 seconds or thereabouts. So I'll have to keep moving this on. So there I was, the disco electrician, the dude, and I would visit all these places. And Danceteria I really liked, because there were these like 6 floors, each of different, one was punk, one was rock, one was this, one was that, one was right. And the everything was very fun. And there was this one floor, an experimental floor, and I used to do performance art there, and people did that, and it was almost there were people like Beth Lapidus, really good friend of mine. She's pretty. So she moved into New York. We became buds, and I was married at the time, so it was like, she was Donna's good bud too, and she was a painter. But she liked, I would tell all these stories, and she was a storyteller too. And so she started doing these big comic books and telling the story, and she'd flip the pages. And then she became a stand-up comedian, and she went to L.A. After I left New York in '88, and she went to L.A. Anyway, so this floor on Danceteria was a place where experimental stuff was, and usually the big crowds weren't there, and so I kind of so they I went in there this one night and see what was going on the experimental floor. And there was, some guy doing stand-up something or other, and had a drum and a harmonica, and it's like, And there was a guy leaning against the wall, and he was very handsome, very well dressed. He looked like he just walked out of a J. Crew's advertisement. He had these really nice linen pants on and these really amazing Italian shoes, and he had a linen jacket, and he had no, he didn't have a jacket. He had a sweater tied around his neck, like he just came off the tennis court, right? And he had this really beautiful blondish hair, not too long, not too short, unbelievably perfect. And so I kind of sauntered over to him and said, "What do you think of this guy?" And he goes, I go, "Did you hit the other floors?" And I said, "Anything interesting?" "Not really." And I said, "So where are you from?" He goes, "England." I said, "Yeah, I thought so, that accent there." And I said, "You want to see something really interesting?" And he looked at me, and here's this guy who just, and, I'm always kind of dressed like Al Bob. And he looked at me, and he's like dressed to the, like amazing. And, I got like overalls on, and I got a flashlight, a wiggy, and a side, and he goes, "You got the torch?" I said, "Yeah, flashlight." He goes, "You got a wiggy?" He knew what a wiggy was. I said, "Yeah." "Were you an electrician?" He goes, "No, but I had family who were." I said, "Oh." Anyway, so I said, "You look like an artist. I'm an artist. Let's go do the art scene of New York." He goes, "It's 10 o'clock. What's up?" I said, "Buddy, you won't believe what you're going to see." So he goes, "Sounds like something I want to do." So we walk out of Danceteria, and, everyone says, "Okay, Al." And we kind of walk down an alley and pop out onto Fifth Avenue. Instead of walking all the way on 26th Street, there's a shortcut I know. Behind the place is where the garbage trucks go, and it's shorter. And it's more interesting because there is a Chinese restaurant that's on the other side, like on 27th Street. And it's like totally out of character of that neighborhood because it's a Chinatown Chinese restaurant. And back in the day, I mean, back in the day, this was actually a Chinese neighborhood, or at least a little one. And because that was what New York was. It wasn't just ghettos. I mean, there would be these little clots of culture everywhere. So, are you hungry? He said, yeah, I really haven't eaten anything. Well, we're going to go in. And it was a dim sum shop. And does anyone there in the audience know what a dim sum shop is? Come on, anybody? So, dim sum shop. There's the basic Chinese buffet, right? And you got the, mushu pork and the this and the that. No, unfortunately. Well, I'm going to tell you. So in your basic Chinese buffet that all the fat white people go to, there's all that stuff, right? And the usual suspects, mushu this and all of that, and then there's this steam table where they have these kind of little steamed dumplings and fried dumplings and spring rolls and pork rolls and buns that are like donuts. It's like dough covered in sugar, right? Well, in a dim sum shop, you have all of that, but it's not like crappy food that white people. It's these elegant, unbelievably savory. So they have buns that aren't like donuts covered in sugar. They are these really interesting, like doughy things that you've never had before. And they're stuffed with duck and vegetables and fish and lobster and you kind of get this doughy thing in your mouth and then you chew through it and all this amazing flavor explodes in your mouth. And then it's like having a dumpling because then all of that juicy stuff that's inside this white dumpling, explodes in your mouth and then you're chewing the doughy thing and it mixes with the explosive flavor and it's like a flavor like you can't believe because you're getting all these different textures and this softness and this hardness and this crispness. Amazing. Then they have this cart stacked with these stainless steel things and a steamer underneath, and they're all open top and bottom, right? And except for the top one that has a little top on it. And they have these steamed rolls, these steamed spring rolls, everything steamed. And all kinds of dumplings and all kinds of like paper thin wrappings and just amazing flavors, right? And so we go through this little alley, we come around, and this place, it looks like, there's no like sign or anything. It's just this light over stairs going down and a neon dragon, red dragon, right? And it's just red dragon. And then 3 Chinese symbols, let's say red dragon, right? And so we go there and we come, we're going, and he's kind of looking around and there's all, it's an alley, cats, rats. And we come to this well-lit stairs and I go, here we go. Hold on to the rail, it's a little slippery. And we go down there and he sees the red dragon. He goes, oh, it's the red dragon. And I said, yeah, that's the red dragon. He goes, no. He could read Chinese. I said, well, that's impressive. Very good. And that's when I said, so what's your name? And he goes, David. David, that's very good. And I said, so you're David, not David. He said, yes, David. And I said, that's because you don't want to lose your id. And he kind of chuckled. And I have a lot of friends who are Davids, and they, don't want to lose their id. So anyway, we go in there, and the lady who everybody there is Chinese. Just everyone's speaking Chinese. And the lady who owns that place comes out from, behind the kitchen and, and comes and kisses me. And she goes, come, your table's right here. And we sit down, and it's a really nice table. And it's right off the main drag, meaning there are more than one cart. There's lots of carts. And, so this table, whatever you want, there's a cart going by. There's the guys over the North 40, they have to wait a while for the cart to make it to them. This one comes out of the kitchen, it's going by you, by me. So I sit there, and this woman goes, "Oh, look at your friend. He is dressed so nice. Maybe I can date him." And I said, "This is, Madame, this is my friend, my new friend David." And he said, "Well, this is better than the other friends you usually bring here because those guys are mobsters." And I say, well, he's my new friend. We're just, and I wanted to impress him. So the first place I brought him was to make you something special. I said, she goes, she picks out, not, we're not asking. She's like picking the special ones off the cart, and here, and this, and this. And she gives us, nice plates and really nice chopsticks, ones that are easy to use, And then she brings out these roots, but they're full of like duck sauce and all these different sauces, right? And she plates and then taking them out of the stainless steel steamers and placing them with her chopsticks onto the plate so it looks beautiful instead of you just getting the steam. And they're all, it's like tapas, these little taste treats, and then the next taste treat. And then she brings out this lobster soup, that because she had gone back and told them to make the special lobster soup. And she brings that out with these really special rolls that, she puts the soup into a big bowl, and then she takes certain vegetables and kind of puts them in there. They come out in frying pans, and then there's this frying pan that she puts on a hot plate with these special rolls that you dip into the soup. It's more stew, and the lobster was amazing. And David is loving this. He's just like, and like amazing. Now, look at your suit. It's not a suit; it's an overall, and it's like got stains of this and stains of that, and all of this in my beard. And David does not have a drip on him. Not, it was like amazing, right? And she's amazed. She goes, "David, you're a special guy. I've never seen anyone he's brought in here. Even the women don't even compare to you. You're a god, And everyone else is just chittering away in Chinese. And she keeps yelling in the back in Chinese. And David starts to speak Chinese to her. And she's, again, "I'm marrying you. You're coming back home with me." And now he's not speaking Chinese like they're speaking Chinese, but he knows enough to say things that really floor her. And so anyway, we spend a good hour there, and she never sits down. She's always the queen of this place and running around and making sure everything's the way she wants it. But she's sitting down, and she brings out her special, rice wine. I mean, the good stuff. And we start knocking that back. And they bring out this amazing dessert to finish it off. And she loves coffee. And so she has the French press, and she brings that, and she brings this other, like, rice whiskey, or like way more high test but we only get one little glass. And we leave after an hour and a half. Now it's pushing towards 11 o'clock. And this meal has loosened us both up. And we're not full, and we're not drunk, but we are in that transcendental state of being physically satiated. And we're going up, and he is like tap dancing down the alley. He goes, "This is amazing." And I said, "Well, you found the right guy. If you want a guide of New York, this is it. But we're just starting." And so we pop out onto Fifth Avenue, and we start talking, and we start, going. And there's a newspaper stand. Before, right where the Flatiron Building is. whatever they call that intersection of Broadway, Fifth Avenue. I think those are the twos that cross. Anyway, and it stays open 24/7, and it's like the New York Library. I mean, it's the literary center of the universe, and it's got every kind of journal, not just Time. It doesn't have Time magazine, it doesn't have Look or Newsweek, but it does have Rutherford guides to anthropologic status, and really, the Whitney's annual, all of these really friggin' amazing journals, that get, a year, 4 times a year, once a month, once a week. It had things like aviation and space technology by McGraw-Hill. It had Jan's. It had the Russian version of that and the French version of that and the Israeli version of that. Anyway, so as we stop here, is my and this guy was like a little midget, and his name Earl, and he wore glasses like this. He had like 4 different glasses, and they were like this. So I could look here, look here, look here, and he hands me this stack of journals, magazines, things of that nature, and goes, "Here, you haven't picked." I said, "We're just on the bop." I said, "You got the thermos back there?" He goes, "Yeah," and he's Irish bar, and he's got his little Druid, thermos of poutine, which would just set off the meal we just had, and we just walk about 6 blocks, so we're just a little parched. So he brings out his little, crystalline Irish. There's a place that makes crystal in Ireland. He had those. Anyway, so we're drinking a little poutine. Well, let's take a look. And he's looking at all these magazines. And he goes, "You read Chance?" I said, "Yeah." And he then looks at Aviation and Space. "Wow, I've only seen this a couple of times." He goes, "Aren't you supposed to be on a list? They just don't sell this." And my friend behind the counter there, "Yes, you got to be on a list. See, his name's on it right there. But he gets it mailed here because he's always someplace else." And I kind of chuckle. And David goes, "Yeah, that's like me. I'm always somewhere else." So we spent a good half an hour talking and drinking a little poutine. And Earl is a really interesting guy because he's like, who's ever talking to him, like if a Russian guy came there and started talking Russian, Earl could speak Russian to him. Swahili. And this guy knew every freaking language. And that's because, yes, he looked like a midget, but no, he was a fairy. This guy was maybe 12,000 years old, but he liked New York, and he liked the literary world of New York. That's where all the publishing houses were. And over the years, he had worked for everyone. And this place was right in the middle of everything, right in front of the Flatiron building that used to be a publishing building. And he worked in every, I don't know what it was at that point in 86. Anyway, so we have another transcendental moment, a half an hour, but again, timeless, meaning I don't have a watch, right? But I have a good sense of time in the linear sense, but I don't even play by that ball. I had already been a adept to the old crone, and I had already gone and visited her 3 times, right? Physically, on the West Coast and driven up that road. And so I knew the score, and I was in probably one of my best phases of being true blue to myself and to, the moment. And so sitting there, it felt like we were there for 3 hours, but really, the guy had a clock, and there was another clock on the Con Ed building, so I could look at that. And so, But we talked, and this guy was telling us stories, and David was telling all the different places he had been. David, I'm a well-traveled guy. This guy had been around, and but he doesn't lay out his cards. He doesn't say anything other than the amazing conversation that we are having about aesthetics and about art and about culture and about time and history and ancient technologies. And this guy, like, in the movie he starred in, Man Who Fell to Earth, that's what I was, this guy's. And he's saying the same thing about me, right? And I can read his energy, and we're almost telepathic. We're both at this adept level, and we're realizing we're brothers from another mother. And so, the guy sends us on because you guys got things to do. I can see the night is still young. You're young men. Go have a good time. And so, and my Earl gives me the thing, you should dress like this guy a little bit more often. You might get a few more girls, and they might stick around. Anyway, so we're walking down Fifth Avenue towards Washington Square, because there's McDougal Street on Washington Square. That's where all the really good coffee houses are. Now, there's the street that comes from the West Village over to the East Village, where all the kind of coffee house nightclubs like the Bitter End and things of that nature were on. And I always forget the name of that street. But anyway, it was one below. It was a major street. It was like the major avenue going east-west that cut diagonally. It paralleled 10th Street. And it went from the West Village to the East Village. Peppermint Lounge was there. Anyway, so we go to Washington Square, and there's still old guys. These guys were the old guard of the unionists, of the communists, of the anarchists, the socialists. These men were the men who made the workers' dream, right? Before it became today's workers' nightmare. And this is 86, meaning the workers' dream has already crashed. The workers' dream kind of ended in 1970, or actually 69, But the inertia of they going this way for the workers was still going up there. They didn't go, they had already gone off the cliff and they were going this way, but they didn't start to dive towards the cave floor. 72 with the oil embargo. And we've been so we talked to a few of the old guys that I know, and like Adam Purple, who's like, that's a whole nother story, a whole nother 3 hours, right? And a few others of Adam's cohorts. And he was like 80-something years old and maybe 90, but he was still spry, in better shape than me. He rode his bicycle everywhere. He knew everybody. And he had been a great artist in the 20s. He was in the Armory show. I think they did, yes, because we talked about Burroughs. We talked about, he was totally a literary guy. I mean, we talked about painting, we talked about sculpture, we talked about physics, we talked about everything. But as I basically interface with all of those aesthetics through the the EMF mystery that I am, David was the bard. He really was a literary guy. And he really, on my little business card, the mystery of Bard, or the Bard mystery, and he really was, because virtually every word out of his mouth was a metaphor to something else. It was like mind-boggling, and I was right there with him, and he was like he was having the best of times. And this was one of these things where we were co-creating with love, right? And I was making him happy, and he was making me happy in our conversation and the things we were talking about and the things we were observing. And New York, America didn't get bombed, whereas London did. And so, really, London did not come out of the economic, social, and psychic trauma of World War II until the 70s, really, and really the 80s. And then the 90s, that's when the money rolled in, and the good times were had for about 10 years where everybody was doing great in the stock market, and then the bubble popped. Anyway, so he was talking about all of that. And not only was he talking about all of that, we were talking in a non-linear way. So he was actually talking about things that were happening today. He actually was talking about Donald Trump. He goes, "Who is this Donald Trump guy?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, I went to Studio 54 the other night and I saw this guy down, and everyone said, 'Oh, there's Donald Trump.' And he was down, and the VIP room is down in the basement, and it's like a dungeon. And they do some really nasty stuff down there, and only for the rich." And I said, "David, you got to go down there? That's pretty amazing." And he goes, "Well, how do you know about it?" So I said, "Well, I'm their electrician. I fix everything. I walk through that place every night." And so David said, "Who's this guy Cohen?" I said, "Oh, that's David. That's Donald Trump's mentor. He's like," and this is '86, and so Star Wars had come out. And I said, that guy is like the emperor. Luke's guy. He's like Darth Vader. I mean, Donald Trump's like Darth Vader, and Cohen's like the Emperor. I mean, these guys are like the dark force. And the really sad thing is, because the story where, the real story of Darth Vader coming out as Luke was already out in '86. And so, we're talking about that, and we're talking about Donald Trump, and he goes, "He's like the pestilence of your political system." And I said, "No, he's like the X-Lax." I said, "If he ever runs for office, he will be, if he were to run for president, he will be the last president." And we talked all about it. He said, "Well, you've never really had a president. You live in a corporate structure." And we were talking about everything that was super relevant today in 1986. And he was going on about Donald Trump and his father, and he's the only other guy, not and about George Bush. He's the only guy who knew the story of George Bush as a cheeky monkey, and that's another story I'll save for another day, because it'll take another hour to tell that one. So we spent a few moments, and we drank out of the paper bag with the boys, and we walked further, and we went right where, Washington Square is. That's the green of NYU. NYU owns all the buildings all the way around it. And facing south, there is the administration building of NYU and the old buildings of NYU. And right smack in the middle of that breaks the aesthetic of what, NYU wants to look like Harvard of the New York City, but that's Columbia. You have to go uptown for that. Anyway, so there is this Frankenstein monster right there. It's this, the steel girdered, ancient, gigantic thing that's 70 feet this way and about 120 feet this way. And you drive a car in, you get out of the car, the man gives you a ticket. You walk to this yellow, past the yellow line. He pushes a couple buttons, and this Frankenstein monster lifts your car up, moves it over sideways, and sticks it into a slot. So if you just had that as a parking lot, which a lot until they turned all of New York City into condos that were 90 stories high, every little sliver, there were lots of little lots of buildings that fell down. They didn't. It's too narrow to build anything, economically sound. So they were parking lots, because parking was, hard to find parking spots in New York City. So this lot that was 70 by 120, maybe you could park 50 cars there if you just park them on the ground. This thing could park close to 300 cars because it put them, bing, So it had like 8 floors of putting 70 cars in, right? So anyway, I go, "Hey, Bob, how you doing?" He hands me a key, right? I go over to this door in the wall. I open the door. I flip him the key and said, "David, get in." And it's this little teeny elevator that maybe 4 people, if they were like face to face, could get in. 2 people, relatively comfortable. He's in the back. I said, "David, step in, get in the back." And then there is no buttons. There's a joystick that you have to use. Anyway, so boom, and then we go all the way up and we pop out past the last floor and go up to the roof. And when we step out, the door opens and we step out, and it's like Disneyland for the mob. And this is owned by Mike Finelli, the Godfather of Godfathers of the Lower East Side of Lower Manhattan. He controlled everything from 57th Street down to the Battery. Every restaurant, the carding, the tablecloths, the booze, right? And he owned a lot of restaurants he owned a lot of parts of nightclubs. And that's how I got all the gigs in all those nightclubs. He goes, "Okay, I'm going to put my money into it. I want this guy to build it because I know it'll get done on time, on budget," right? So we go up to the roof, we pop out, and what is there? But do you guys know what roller derby is? It's like a roller rink with guys or girls on roller skates, and they wear crash helmets, and that's about it. A little padding on their hips and little things on their kneecaps, but that's about it. And things on their elbows so they can hit people. And the game is everyone goes round and round in a circle, and there's this one person in a team that they fling, right? The big girl at the end grabs the smallest girl and basically throws her to the front of the line. And then there are all these defenders who try and block her from getting to the front of the line. And then if that girl gets to the front of the line, the defending guys have to roller skate around and come and knock her down, right? So it's a very violent, deadly game, right? And so the girls playing this are, exotic dancers from titty bars and this was again, I repeat, the mobsters' Disneyland. And so, there is this circle that is as big as, it's 70 feet wide by 120 feet long, and these girls are zipping around, and they're trying to kill each other. And whoever does somebody in the worst, hip checks or put them into a brick wall, knocks their teeth out, whatever, or gets into a really nasty fight, they have not the mobster bosses, but their made men will go in there. Tony Two Toes and Bobby Bentnose will kind of pull the girls apart and give them each a Benjamin, right? And that's their entertainment. Now, in the middle of this thing, they have a bowling alley, right? And it's called pins, right? So the bowling pins are not as big as the AMF, and the balls are about this big, right? But they're just like bowling balls. They're hard wood. And they kind of throw them down the alley, and the alley's not as long. And at the end of the alley, there are the pins. You knock the pins down, and they don't have a machine. They have boys, teenagers. You have to be between the age of 14 and 20. And if you're back there, and he knocks the pins down, and a couple aren't. They have this little hand thing that grabs the pins that are still standing, picks them up, so you can clean the other pins out of the way. And as you're doing that, the first thing you do is grab that guy's ball, and there's an electric motor with a tire on it, and you throw it in there, and it spins it up and shoots it back to the guys. Well, as soon as they get their ball, they chuck it down the alley again, whether the guy has cleaned the pins or not. And so these guys have to do it really fast, faster than the AMF machine does. And then there's this net where they have to dive into, or else, they'll get hit by the ball. And these guys aren't wearing any, padded anything, no crash helmet, no nothing. So actually, the entertainment of the mobsters is to throw that ball as hard and fast down the alley while the guy is still doing it. And if he doesn't clean it off and doesn't, jump into that net, if he's still there, he's going to get a pin in the head or the ball in the nose, or, it'll catch him on the finger and break his finger off. And so pretty much everybody, so it's like they got a bench. The guy who just gets hit in the head with a ball, they kind of carry him off. Well, everyone who gets to sit on the bench gets $100 right off the start. Break a finger, $100. Get hit in the head really bad, $300. Break some teeth or nose, $500. So these guys are playing this thing where they're going to get hit but not die, because some of these guys are like carried away unconscious, and Dr. Faluji takes care of them. And so we pop out onto that. And all the boys, ow, because one of my gigs was this Frankenstein monster. I made it work. I repaired this thing at least once a week, because I had all these big relays, and it was totally 1919 technology, Frankenstein relays and knife switches and all the rest. And there were no spare parts. Something broke. I had to fabricate it at, there was this red-headed guy who was, not swell, his name, but he had a shop that had every kind of milling equipment, meaning if you wanted to fabricate something, instead of having to spend $70,000 to build yourself a shop, you could rent a few hours, and he had many benches, so you could, create things. And again, another friend, Zykes or Zix or Zilches, and he had this false red hair like Donald Trump, put in with plugs, right? And his secretary of the last 70 years, her name was Chickadee, and they were always fucking in the office. It was unbelievable. It's like these two old people, 110, and they were doing that. I mean, making noise, and the wall was, Zelfs was it. Go Google Zelfs, New York City, 1940 to 1970, 80 machine shop. And I'm sure they'll have a picture of him. He's like a hoot. And he lived there. He never left that place. Anyway, him and Chickadee were always at it. So that's why those guys because I was always there fixing that machine, right? And I did all, Mike Finelli had lots of buildings, lots of things like this, and I was his electrician, And actually, Grandpa Stoll was, but I was his, I fixed everything. And what he would do, I mean, he'd have stuff where, like at his bar, he got me a pager, like before anyone had a pager. And it didn't show anything, but the only person who was calling this number was him. So I would drop everything and go to the bar and say, "Yeah, Mike, what do you need?" And I need some, the bathroom over there. It needs something. And I go in there and I, replace the light bulb. Here, and he handed me an envelope and had somewhere between $500 and $1,500. Because he loved me, and of course I would take care of, this monster and other unbelievable things he had. So we pop out there, and all the guys, "Hey, Al, come on over here." And they got the Italian food, and Mama's over there in the kitchen on the roof. And it's like being out in the country. It's got trees, but it's the roof of this parking monster. And the girls are going around and around, and they got disco lights, and they're wearing hoochie clothes. They're not really dressed up, And so these girls get $1,000 until they're carried away. And every girl gets $1,000, right? And so they're like, and if they beat somebody up, they get another $5. It's like unbelievable. It's like the Roman Colosseum, right? And so David is like, he's like in shock. And so I go, "Come on, let's go talk to the boys." And so they're mooks Well, they'll talk like this and that's boo, but that boo. You know what I mean? I took care of that thing that we thought that they, you know. And then there were guys like Mike and other who were really sophisticated. They could talk about anything. And Mike Finelli was the only guy who had a reasonable name. The rest were guys: Tony Two Toes, Bobby Bentnose, Joey Ziggles. Who knows what that? But Joey Ziggles had gone to a music, like Boston music whoop-de-doo. I mean, he was, and he always had a guitar in his hand. And he was always doing riffs. And David was like, whoa. And he had a bunch of guitars, and there was a piano there and drums. And a couple of these guys could, make a fair game at it. But once we got talking, they all had their little projects for me. And every time I went up there, they would talk about that or this. There were three guys who would talk about something interesting, and two of them wasn't there. And Mike was involved in a business thing. So, and I just I said, let's go over and meet Joe. You like him. And so he had some serious guitars. And David goes, wow, that's a such and such, such and such. And the guy goes, oh, you know that? Yeah. So they started playing, Muddy Waters and really old, interesting black music, really, the foundation. And they're really going at it. And Joey goes, wow, yeah, this guy, he's pretty amazing. He's better than me. And they start singing songs that nobody knows, and David knows them. And, and I still just know him as David. I don't know where, I know he's English, and I know he's lived here, and here, because we talked about Paddington Station. I used to live there in this little apartment about the size of the screen of my phone here, and in Woking and all different places, right? And so, and he had lived in all these places, just like I lived in every neighborhood in New York. He lived in every town, village in there. Plus, he lived in places like in Paris and in Ireland and in Australia. He lived in, Switzerland and Germany, and Italy, all the places I lived in all over the world. He had kind of maybe not lived there as long as I did, but in a lot of ways he did. He, I lived there a year, 6 months, this, that, or the other thing. Anyway, so they're playing, and they are really playing good. And so a couple of the other old timers pick up a guitar and play background, and another guy sits down at the drum and starts, he plays drums well enough to, at least accompany these guys. And then somebody sits down at the piano, and they really start, between Joey and David, they are knocking some songs out. And those two guys are lifting the other guys up, right? And that's when, Mike kind of, I didn't notice, but he walks over, and the girls stop roller skating, the guys stop playing pins, and everyone kind of comes over and listens to the music and starts swaying. And this Mike, like I said, loved me, but he would not show his kind of physical affection towards me, not very often. Sometimes he did. Just to, I remember a number of times we were in places and people said, "What? He's not one of us." And Mike would go, "He is my grandson." And he would put his arm around me and do the grandfather hug, right? Real grandfather hug, right? And at this time, he kind of came over and put his arm around me and smiled and said, "This is, you've never brought anyone here. And for this guy to be the first, this is why I love you. You could bring anyone you wanted here, and you never do, because you respect us so much that you don't want to do anything that might. But you brought the first guy you bring is like amazing. This is why I love you, man." And then what does he do? He goes in the back room and he brings out an Italian, what they call button squeeze box, and he starts playing as good as Joe and David are. He's playing that, and then they get into some Irish tunes. Now Mike's 100% Italian, but before the Italians showed up, the Irish were there, and they were the gangsters, you know. So he had to, you know, he was the diplomat, so he was one of the guys. He could deal with any mob, any gang, right, any clan, and and he knew their cultural dynamic and fit right in. He would play to their what they were. That's why he was so successful, and that's why he never had to, never, you know, in all the years that I worked for him, knew him, I never saw him get violent. I never saw him get angry. I mean, the worst was like he'd lift his eyebrow and people, okay, okay, and he starts playing. We played the night away. And the girls were dancing. You know, they went back to being the hoochie coochie girls, and they liked that better, so they wouldn't be black and blue the next morning. And they were like, you know, took their little, you know, made their costumes a lot more risque, and dancing amongst the music and dancing with some of the guys, and we just had an amazing, 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 you know. And again, could have been 20 hours. Who knows? You know, we stop until the girls said, "Well, we have to go to work tomorrow," and the pin boy said, "We have to go to the hospital," and half the crew said, "Well, we have to go do that thing we talked about. You know, the guy that we got to go do that." And so Mike takes. We all go down, and Mike, me, David, and Joey go down the elevator. The four of us, and we're kind of tight. And we get into Mike has a black Lincoln, right, from the '60s, really nice Lincoln, a you know, a limousine Lincoln. And we get in there, and it's got this kind of banquette, meaning one of the doors doesn't open, and so maybe 8 people can sit in this thing. It's just four of us. It's got a bar in it. You know, he brings out the ouzo, and the other. There's a couple other. He liked ouzo. I liked ouzo, and he's got a full bar there, and he's got an attendant to serve us. We don't serve ourselves. And the limo guy and his Top Gun sitting in the shotgun seat with a shotgun. Anyway, so we drive uptown, back uptown, along the west side, and right next to Port Authority Bus Terminal on 8th Avenue, there are all of these fruit stands, right? And and they're open 24/7, 365. And we walk past it, and they go, "Hey, Mike, hey," you know, and we all gone, and we go in the back, and everyone's got these hand trucks moving boxes of food around. We walk back, and there's refrigerators, and they're taking fruit out of that, and trucks loading it in off of the loading dock. And there's this one door for a refrigerator. We open it up, and it goes in and down into the ground, and carpeted, and it's swank up the swank. And it's like a nightclub there, a restaurant, big bar, and like Tony Bennett is singing. And it's straight, that scene that in Goodfellas, where, what's his name, our hero who tells us the story, you know, he wasn't a made man, falls in love with that Jewish girl, and he wants to impress her, and he tries like beating up the orthodontist next to her and a few other things, which makes her hot, but she's, you know, it's in her neighborhood, so she has to scream at him. And then he says, "Let me take you someplace," and he takes her there. And the whole place is crowded up the kazoo, and everyone's waiting online to get it. And Walter was the same, I think, and he walks in. The maitre d' goes, "Walter," shakes his hand, and the guy slips him and they walk to the very front, and they push everybody, you know, Nelson Rockefeller, they push him over there, and they put Walter's little table with 2 chairs and a totally, you know, beautiful white tablecloth and a light and pepper shaker, and they bring a thing of champagne, and Tony Bennett says, "And here's a song for my good friend Walter," right there. And you know, it's not as crowded. You know, this is a truly mobster place. I mean, it's not the wannabes can kind of get in there if they give the maitre d' $1,000. This is just made men. And we, you know, and Mike, this is his place. He takes us in there, and it's like, I don't know, 4:30 in the morning. And again, we sit down and they bring the booze, put it on the table, glasses, and we have our own waiter. And um, there is no menu. Mike goes, "What do you want?" And David goes, and I said, "Allow me, David." I said, "We want each 4 lobsters, and the number 2 lobster Newburg to dip those lobsters into, and we want eggs Benedict on top of sirloin steaks." And we want, and I go through this whole thing, and croissants and this kind of potatoes, and and we want a bottle of Paddy's Irish whiskey, which was you couldn't get in America. Anyway, guy comes right out with it. One of those for him and one of these for me. And David looks at this, and I go, "I don't eat this way all the time. I'm just showing you the New York that you probably never had or knew about. This is one of them." And Mike is just just keeps talking to David about everything, about art and philosophy, and they're talking about mathematics. I mean, just going on, and I'm just basking in. And Joey's got his guitar and he's just like serenading us with, stuff. And then, Tony Bennett comes down and has a drink with us and starts singing with Joey. And this is like, it's not even in the movies. It's not even in the movies, right? So, that was that. And we had this amazing breakfast. And Tony Two Toes has these things called spliffs. And in Jamaica, spliffs are newspaper with marijuana leaves, with bud, and then sprinkled with what is known as lamb's breath, which is those purple little crystally crystals, right? And the newspaper is kind of moist. The marijuana leaves are kind of damp. And the only dry thing is the bud, and that too is like somehow fresh, and the only thing really dry that really really burns is the lamb's breath, and those are in the middle of Cuban cigars. And Tony Two Toes has like a thermidor of these things with him all the time, smokes them nonstop, And, it smells like marijuana, but this guy's a made man. No cop would, in his right mind, stop him, right? Anyway, so, Tony says, "Hey, you want one of these?" So, yeah, David, try this, So we got these spliffs, we're smoking these things, and they're like psychotropic. Talk about mushrooms. And so, there's Tony Bennett singing with Joey, he was a Joey. And we've just had this, and we've not stuffed ourselves with this amazing rich food, but just had, again, satiated, right? And we take a little piss, and then they brought the Napoleons, these amazing Napoleons, and coffee like you can't believe. Like, it was like shooting methamphetamines, but you were drinking this coffee that tasted unbelievable. And it wasn't a latte, or and it wasn't it was this thing that you'd never tasted before, but coffee. And we're drinking those, and every time they empty it, they have this little pot of this and this little pot of that, and they pour them at the same time, and it goes in there perfectly mixed, and then there's a picture of Marilyn Monroe there. It's like. And so, David is just in ecstasy. This is, this guy has been around the block. He hasn't bragged or told me any stories. Except we only have talked about philosophy and art and just intellectual. It was like, he was, Sophocles and I was Alexander, or he was Alexander and I was Sophocles. And we just keep doing that back and forth. And the rest of the guys, have them with the hey, but the other guys were, like Joey and Mike and a few other guys who were really smart as a razor blade, right? Sharp, 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 and knew a ton of everything. Because to run a big business like the mob, you're not a dummy. So, and they start telling the stories about everything, about the CIA, the mob, Kennedy's assassination, the Nazis, everything, right? And Dave and I I've heard these stories before from these guys, but he's kind of knows the story, but not like from the horse's mouth. And so he is like, just his mind is getting blown every 20 seconds, right? So we're there for a good amount of time. And then someone taps Mike on the shoulder and he goes, "Oh, okay. Okay, boys, it's time. We got to go." So we kind of get up and it was just Mike, me, and David who got in the limousine. And so he goes, "Where do you boys want to go?" And I said, Mike, since we're just down the street from 42nd Street, take us down 42nd Street, and give us your tour. And he owned all these theaters and peep shows and and other things, So we took a slow roll, and there's nobody on the street, and the sky is kind of it's going from navy blue to lighter blue, like the color of my time swirl here. And so at Times Square, right at where George M is, he lets us off, right? And we get out, and he gives us, "I really love meeting you, Dave. I hope to see you again. Here's my business card. Call me anytime. You need anything anywhere in the world, give me a call." Al, you always amaze me. That's why you're my grandson. I love you. He drives away. So we walk down 42nd Street to this alley, and I was telling you about the alleys where you go into the time vortex, right? And we turn and we go to one of the tea rooms, and there's the tea maiden, right? "Hey, boys," right? And she brings Irish scones, sweet cream, and she goes, "Do you boys want a Irish breakfast?" I said, "No, no, no, madame. Just tea, and the scones will do." "Oh, okay." And fresh butter, and some marmalade jam, because I love marmalade jam. I love me some marmalade jam, and she makes it fresh. Anyway, so we're sitting there, and we're looking out this window, and we are seeing 19th century London. And David is just, he did not expect this, to take a little stroll and go to Danceteria. He did not expect all of this, right? And so he is like, "Al, I've never met anybody like you." And I said, "Vice versa, Dave. I've never met a guy like you, because you always stepped up. You always, there was never a point where you say, 'Oh, I'm tired. Oh, this is scary. Oh, this is this.' No, you were like on it. And the way you played music, I got, you can't believe how many brownie points I got. I mean, all those people are like my family, but now they're really glad and happy that I'm there. That Chinese woman back there, Madame, she loves me, but she loved you, baby. And my, newsman. I mean, that was like one of his top special days that I've known him, and I've known him 20 years. You made everyone I love happy, which made me happy. So we almost, started crying. We would have started tonguing each other if that was my thing. But he just smiled with this look of love's co-creation. We were just basking in this time vortex of the tea room. And first, she brings us the first pot, the cast iron pot with a Roman numeral 1. She pours us that, and we drink that, and we get all our, wow, ooh, I feel good. I was a little bit tired. I just spent 48 hours in the last, 8, and yeah, good. And then she brings out, after we finish that, she brings out another pot and another plate of now hot cross buns, and she pours us that, and now our little brains are even sharper. We're like all the little engines in our psyche is like really, and we are now in state. And then she brings pot number 3, and I look at her. I said, 3? And she goes, the old crone said it was fine. Right? And with that, 1 hour and 26 minutes and 14 seconds, just an hour and 20 minutes late from when I said I would start. From that point on, here we go. Everyone get in your comfortable position. Relax. Breathe in that 20% and expel that 20%. And you're drinking from the third pot in the tea room, eating hot cross buns. And you're going deeper and deeper into that state of conscious relaxation. Your conscious mind, your little monkey in your mind, is gone. You're no longer in your avatar. You're not in your bag of water. You're not corralled by the, you're not that mud puppet. You are in your Akashic record. Your library brings you your Akashic record. You open up the books. You take your right hand, put it on the right page, your left hand on the left page. You lean into it, and you let go of all your anxieties, all your fears, all your self-loathing, and you become light as a feather. And as you bounce around, you go out the open door to the bridge of your id that takes you from your subconscious, which is your library of your Akashic record. You're going over the bridge into your superconscious mind, which is the sanctuary of your own choosing. And you're walking down onto the land, the sand, the earth, the grass, the water, the whatever your sanctuary is. And you go over to the meadow and lie down, and you're lying down on your picnic blanket with me, David, and yourself, and your cadre that's all around. And the blankets are all coming together as one gigantic blanket, and we feel so warm from the sun. And we all get up, and we walk over to the tree of knowledge, and we take our telescope eye, and we look down the crack into the old crone's farmhouse. We look into it, and the purple-green foam comes up and takes us down into the root of the tree of life, into the old crone's farmhouse, into her music hall, which is a good 2,000 square foot big with a stage, right? And who is on the stage but Joey Zaz, and David Bowie. We look around. Where's David? There's David Bowie. And David Bowie looks just like Ziggy Stardust. He just looks like, all those other musicians that, David Bowie just didn't stick as one. He was, Bing Crosby. He was Frank Sinatra. He was Ziggy Stardust. He was the best rocker. He was the best, electronica. He was the best everything that he ever was, right? And there are all the Davids up there, along with Joey Z's, and a number of other great musicians. Think of every great musician, the one you most loved. They're up there, and they're starting to play, and we're all rocking, and we're all rolling. And the David that you saw in the tea house, he's still there. We're still in the tea house, but you're already in the old crone's dance hall. You already have gone into state. And we and you are also at the same time, because there is no time, in the tea house with David and I. And so we get up, we thank the maiden, and we walk out of the the tea house into the alley, and we walk back onto, it wasn't 42nd Street, it was like maybe 43rd or 38th, and we walk all the way to the east side and go. There's a bridge that goes from Second Avenue over onto across FDR, and there's this walkway that goes all the way down past the United Nations and keeps going down to 16th Street. And we walk down that till about, no, we walk uptown. That's what we do. We walk uptown from there, and then we cut back and Central Park, and we come out in front of the Waldorf Astoria, and that's where he's staying. And he says, "Oh, let's get one more drink." And we go into the Oak Room, and they are always open, and we have another drink. And as we walked around from the tea house, the sun was coming up, and it was coming down the avenues and the streets. And so it was still dark when you went into, because the sun wasn't above us, it was coming at us. And it was very magical. And one movie that really caught that was Woody Allen's Manhattan. And that's the kind of experience we were having. And he was just going on and on about how this was the most amazing day of his life, right? And then I drop him off, and we go into the Oak Room, and we have a nice little double malt. And again, we've drank more liquor than I normally have drank in years together, and neither of us are stoned. And the third pot kind of gave us this almost psychotropic buzz, but so did the spliffs of Tony Two Toes. And yet we weren't stoned, we weren't drunk, we weren't like over, we've had a lot of food, but the best of food. And we felt totally satiated on every level the human spirit could have, right? And we, from the time we walked out of Danceteria, we were going into state, because we were both shamanic shaman. And we were both harmonizing with each of our frequencies. And the more I shared, the more he shared himself, not braggadociously, "Oh, I did this, I'm David Bowie." No, but with who he really, really was. Anyway, so we walk out of the Oak Room into the lobby of the Waldorf, and he goes, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I got to go to work." He goes, "You got to go to work?" I said, "Yeah, I got a business and employees and all kinds of stuff." And so he goes, "Listen, I'm going to have, I think it was Saturday that day, and this was Sunday now." He goes, "Tomorrow, I'm going to have a party up in my suite, and I'm going to put your name on there. It's going to be come around 7:30. Go to the desk here." And he goes, "By the way, let's go to the desk." And Pierre, who was the head manager, "This is my friend Al. That party I'm going to have, tomorrow. He's like the guest of honor. He's gonna be here. Oh, okay, David, not a problem." So we shake hands, we hug, we kiss on each cheek, and I go off to work, because I haven't slept in 2 days now, and but I feel fine, just fine. So the next day I go, after work, I clean myself up. I'm not wearing my overalls. I'm kind of wearing, the nicest thing I have, and I go into the Waldorf, and I say, "I'm going to suite so and so number. They're having a party. I think my name's on the list." I give them my name. "Oh yes, you're there. That elevator. Go to the 12th floor." So I go up there, and they have, he's got a bodyguard. So he looks at the list. "Oh yes, you're on the list." He opens the door. Walk in, and it's full of famous artists and rock and roll people. Now I know a lot. I know Andy Warhol. I know Ivan Karp, who owns OK Harris. You know, I know a number of people in the rock and roll, you know, producers, and I'm yeah, and this guy, yeah, oh yeah, and when I walk in, David introduces, hey everyone, this is my friend Al. I just met him the other night at Danceteria. He's an amazing guy, and all those guys. Oh yeah, we know Al, and so I go over again. He comes over, hugs me, gives me a kiss on each cheek, and he goes, "Go get something to eat and a drink." So I kind of go get myself. He's got patties there, and pour myself a couple ice cubes, some patties, and he's got a nice little spread. So I have a little thing, and I go, and he's like talking to a whole bunch of people. So I'm not just gonna, you know, inject myself into that, and so. But I do find a nice little place, a nice little couch, nice little coffee table. Put my little plate. And I'm gonna, because I haven't really eaten anything all day, so I'm hungry. So I'm eating this nice food and having my nice little glass of patties. And this really attractive woman next to me, I'm probably 86. I guess what is that? Let's see, 50 to 60, 70, 80. So I'm 36 years old, give or take. And so this woman says to me, so you know David Bowie? And I go, who? David Bowie. Where? David Bowie, the guy who just introduced you to everybody. He didn't. I got here first, to try and talk to him, and he excused himself and then didn't come back until there was a crowd. But he didn't do that to anybody. And I know I don't know these people, but they're famous. I know that. And you're the only one he introduced. And I said, well, we had a pretty interesting night. And I said, what's his name? What do you mean? You don't know his name? I said, well, I know his name is David. What's his last name? And she goes, Bowie. Rocket Man, Ziggy Stardust, and she starts going on and on. I go, David. And I look at him and I see the picture on station to station, and I'm like, yeah, that's that guy. And that's when I got up and went over to them and kind of went behind him. And that thing that chummy guys do, that like they put their two knees behind the other guy's knees and they kind of do this and they fall back. And he did that, and I didn't need to catch him, but I was there to catch him. And he looked at me, he started laughing. And he goes, so that girl told you who I was, right? Right? I could hear her say, Bowie, Bowie, Bowie. I said, yes. And he goes, that's why I loved you, man. Didn't even know I was David Bowie. And you treated me like better than anybody has ever treated me. I mean, we are. I said, I know, we are. And we almost started to have little tears, and everyone was going, so what did you do? And he goes, oh, that's between me and Al. Al, do you want to tell him the story? I said, no, Dave, not unless you want to tell the story. He goes, no, I don't want to tell the story. You want to? No. He said, it's just one of the best nights of my life. I said, thanks, Dave. That makes me feel good. So we had the nice little cocktail party, but he still it's his party. He's entertaining it. He is, rolling it. So I just kind of look around for someone having, I go talk to Ivan. I go talk to Andy. I go talk to the other guys I know, and they kind of go shake their head. And they said, only you. I said, yeah, only me. What did you expect? And so I said, you guys have known me a long time. What do you expect? And I kind of, yep. And anyway, so I stay a couple hours or two, and he has to be David Bowie with all these people. And so after a few hours and a few sips and a few other, like, he comes over and says, well, what are you doing? I got the next few days. I don't have to do anything. I have to do this show in Madison Square Garden. I said, did you know that I'm the master electrician there? And he goes, really? I said, yeah. He goes, well, I'll see you then. He goes, no, we got to hang out. And he goes, I want to go see John Cale. And I said, well, John's a good buddy of mine. Really? I said, yeah, he's going to take me to Wires. So then the three of us can go, right? And then he goes, and John Lennon, I got to go see him. And I go, well, no, I have breakfast with him a lot because I have a girlfriend who lives right next to his apartment house there, the Dakota, and there's this one, you know, you know, stall that everyone goes and have breakfast at, and he's anyway. So that's what we did. We spent one day with John and another day with John, and then we went to the galleries and we met. We went and hung with Andy at the factory and a few other fun places, and we had about 3 or 4 really, really, really beautiful days. And then I never really saw him again until I don't know how many years later. So, do any of you know who Basquiat is? Do any of you know who Samo is? Samo is an artist, and his like given name was Basquiat, and he came from I always forget this. There is Santo Domingo, and then there's Haiti, right? And these rich people went. They had a nice beach house in Santo Domingo, and they would go to Haiti to have fun, like raping children, and it was so bizarre because Haiti had earthquakes and hurricanes and plagues, and half the island, and there was no real river or anything. It was just this invisible line. Everything was shit on the Haiti side, and everything in Santo Domingo was like, Palm Springs golf course. And this couple went to Haiti, and they found this woman who was starving to death, and she had 6 children, and this one little baby that was stuck on her nipple and was about to die, and they bought the baby. They gave the mother 1,000, 10 Benjamins, and took the baby back to Santo Domingo, and then stuck it in a suitcase and took the plane back to New York. And then they raised it as their child because they didn't have any children, couldn't have kids. They were too. Anyway, and they treated it like a pet, but dressed it, put it in costumes, educated it, sent it off to private school, da da da. And as it got older, towards teenagerhood, it was looking more and more like a black child and not just their kid with a good tan. And his hair is getting curlier and getting a beard, and he wasn't looking after girls; he was looking after boys. So they said, "Oh, we can't have this." So what did they do? They took the kid, they put him, and they were like living in Westchester or Connecticut, and put him in the limo and gave him $10, and he was wearing one of his little Lord Fauntleroy suits, and had their chauffeur drive him to like 147th Street in South Bronx, right, and then just kicked them out of the car and drove away. And I used to work up there, and because when I was working for Hung and Young Electric, and the Chinese owned a lot of the South Bronx, but they didn't get along with the brothers. Got along great with the Hispanics, but not with the brothers. And so I would go up there with the unmarked truck and fix all things electric in their buildings. And that's when I was driving down, out of Clayton Bow Boulevard and 147th Street, and I see this kid, hooking. There are all of these trannies, and there's this kid in his little Lord Fauntleroy suit, and he's messed up, beat up, black eye, and it looks like he, hasn't eaten in weeks, and hasn't not slept in that suit. It's all tattered and broken, and I stop, and I said, "Get in." And he gets in, and he goes, It's $3 for a blowjob. And I go, no. I said, "What are you doing here?" And then he tells me the sad story. I said, "So you got no place?" I said, "Where do you sleep?" And he goes, "On a piece of cardboard in the park." I said, "Okay, that's it." So I drive him downtown, and there's this place in Soho it's called Food, run by these 2 beautiful Jewish women who know how to make a sandwich and matzo ball soup, and it was like Whole Foods in 1972, before any of that, right? And so I say, feed this, because I built that for these girls, and they couldn't pay me my last check. So I said, okay. And this, no one thought this was the first real restaurant for Soho. Before it was like, mostly still factories, but it was starting to become Soho, and still no restaurants or bars or anything had moved in there. And so food, these girls, I think their daddy owned the building from way back, or grandpa had it. And it was a beautiful building, 1-story building, maybe about 4,000 square, a whole corner of a lot, Spring Street and Worth. And it had windows all the way around, sunny, 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 right? And a beautiful, so I built it, beautiful kitchen, beautiful, everything clean, very simple. Big windows was the decoration. Looking at Soho, seeing the factories, seeing the artists, that was it. And it was like going into a cafeteria. You kind of got online, and they'd make you a sandwich, and that it was basically killer sandwich, killer salad, and 4 different soups. That was it. And they had 4 different salads, and 20 different salad dressings. And you could get any kind of, big brisket, big, whatever sandwiches that thick, and freshly made bread. Everything they had, they made there, right? Highest quality, and relatively affordable until Soho became Soho. I mean, when they started out, you could get a whole meal there for $5, because that's pretty much what it was done for the artists. I said, we have to be able to eat in here. The women from Westchester, they actually had a board up there, Westchester, price, artist price, a famous artist price, working artist price, a factory worker, right? Factory worker could get a meal there for $3. The ladies from Westchester, they had to pay $40, but they wanted to pay $40, right? If they were charged $30, they wouldn't appreciate this amazing food. Anyway, so I take Basquiat in there and say, girls, he needs your attention. So they had a loft right down the street. We both had lofts in Worcester Street. I had a whole floor. They had one of my lofts. And so they fed him, took him back to their place, threw him in their big jacuzzi, and scrubbed him off. And then my buddy, who made paper out of clothes, and his whole loft on the ground floor that he could have trucks. He had the loft on the ground floor that had the loading dock, so he could. He had a forklift, and he would take. I went down there, and I picked out an ensemble for him, and came back up to the girls' place, and kind of gave him a bunch of clothes, and they said, well, he's so cute, he can stay with us, because I had these lofts that I were, like theirs. I, gave them a key fee. They got a 1,000 square feet thing with windows, a septic line, water line, a breaker panel, and 4 walls, and a door. And then I fixed it up for them. And I had another 6 of these that I was in the process of fixing up for other folk. And I had another floor downtown on Chamber Street that went a really gigantic loft, went all the way through. And that's where my friend Jody had one of those, and a friend of his, a couple other of us, worker artist guys, were doing this, getting these, knowing which loft we could rent really cheap for like 5-10 years, and then slice it up and, key fee, and then, charge them, we'd have 10 lofts. We're spending $300 for a whole floor. We charge, a big chunk of change for the key to get in. Then the rent there is like $1,000 a piece. So we're paying $300 for the whole floor. We got 10 lofts. We're charging them each, but they're lawyers and yuppies, and they got the money. And then we get another big bag of cash to fix it up so they can feel like they're artists. So that was Soho. That was Tribeca in the 70s and 80s. And then in the 90s, guys like Donald Trump bought everything up and built skyscrapers, which was like, and that's another 3-hour story. So anyway, so that's Basquiat. So after the girls, gave him unconditional Jewish love for about a week, I said, okay, buddy, you need something to do? You're going to be my electric helper. And I fixed up one of these lofts downtown that, actually you're going to have your own little loft where you can, because I realized this guy was a real artist because he would draw on anything, just anywhere, anytime, anything, right? And the girls were complaining that he was like, taking their decoupage pencils and, doing paintings on the wall and on their appliances and, and I said, well, they look pretty good. Yes, yes, yes. So that's why we're not that mad. It's actually quite nice. But this guy, he can't stop being an artist. So he needs to be with you. So I said, okay, okay. You've done your job. You like healed him from that trauma with chicken soup and blintzes and your love and I can see he's ready to go, right? So he's working for me. And so I'm going, yes, I'm a master electrician. Yes, I'm still working for Grandpa Stahl, but pretty much on very specific things, right? Yes, I have this whole rock and roll clientele. Yes, I have all of this art world clientele. And yes, I have all of these lofts all over Soho and Tribeca that I'm fixing up and selling and just having a grand old time. But I still, I'm still, 3/4 of all of that work is being an electrician of some sort. So I make this guy, but the first job we do is somebody buys a whole friggin' building and wants to do what I'm doing, but wants me to do it. And I say, well, that's fun and dandy, but this is how much money when I do it. If I'm doing it for you, I want like 5 times that. Instead of getting 20 grand for each of those things just for the key, I want 5 times that. Instead of like 40 grand for fixing it up to be like an artist, I want 5 times that, right? The guy goes, no problem. And that's when I don't want to do something, I charge people a unbelievable, extraordinary amount of money. And when they say no problem, then it's no problem because I can do anything. You're going to pay me enough. And then I do it my way. And that's the other little, I said, buddy, you can't tell me at all because you're asking me to do this because I'm the guy who knows how to do this. So don't tell me that you got to do it this way or that way, or I'm walking with the money that I got in my pocket from you, right? And before I go, I want, you're going to pay me 5 times more. I want that 2 times just to start. So we start on this building, and it's kind of over, it's where 7th Avenue runs into Varick Street, which then goes from maybe, it's right about Hudson, and it goes all the way down to the World Trade Center, Varick Street. And so it's a really beautiful building. It was kind of industrial building built in the 30s or 40s, and it's all red brick, and the walls are like 80% glass, just gigantic glass house. And it's facing kind of southernly, to the east is here and the west is there. So it gets sunlight all day long, just amazing light. And I put, the elevators were in the back of the building, so the hallways didn't have to be in the middle. So so each of those lofts, there were about 40 lofts in this whole gigantic building. And there were like 10 lofts a floor, and it was 6 floors high, but just those 40 where he was going to rent, the other 2 floors were going to be his. Anyway, so we started the job, and the first thing we had to do was demo the building. And from World War II on, this building was superfluous. It didn't get torn down, but it wasn't really used by the people who built it. They sold it to somebody else who sold it to somebody else, and then each of those things were kind of split up. So it was kind of easy to build this because each floor was kind of sliced up into 6 or 8 lofts, spaces for, manufacturing or storage or whatever. And it had really, in the back of the building, that's where Hudson Street is. So they had these gigantic loading platforms, and they had a bunch of elevators. The lobby was very nice lobby. And so it was really a perfect building for what this guy wanted to do. So my first thing was I had to demo out this building. Well, if it was just me and Basquiat, Samo, to do this, it would have been, we'd still be doing it today. But no, I call up Mike Finelli, who is like Mr. Carding, and he is hooked up. I've hooked him up with Madame Olga Kluver and Olga, who has the Big Apple auction house. And he is like, not so much with Madame Olga Kluver, but Olga, the Big Apple auction house and her antique stores and all of that. She went 50-50 with Mike. And he had great connections of both selling stuff and buying stuff. That what they would call the dark web today. And so I called him up and he brought over his trucks, and I kind of went through each loft first, and then with, black magic marker wrote on the door what was in there, right? And kind of where I thought who should get it, where it should go, what was the best, I was the first thing. And I went into this one loft that was about 1,500 square feet, and it was chocked to the ceiling with amazing stuff. I mean, jewelry, the first plastic jewelry made in the 30s, all this white bucks and silk shirts, and everything was packed perfectly and still, like the day it was put in there, right? And half of the stuff there was art supplies. So my buddy, all my buddies who I did this work with, I had a buddy named Jody he was the kind of plumber, sculptor that I was the electrician. Another friend who was a mason, and he was the same, and a painter. And I had about 8 buddies who were all artists, but really good at their trade. And when we do these restaurants and nightclubs and rich people's places, we would do it as a team, because for 10, 20 years, we had been working together doing this. So we were like psychically linked. And two of the, Jody was an architect. He went to Cooper Union to be an architect, but, he thought plumbing was fun, just like I thought electric work was fun. Anyway, and all these other guys loved doing their trade, so that's why we did a great job. But they're all artists. So I called them up and I said, okay, guys, all these other, go and take a look at, and every building I ever demoed out, I would do the same thing. I called my friends first, and we would pick it first, take what we wanted, and then we would mark on the doors what was in there, and then Mike would come and get the rest. And so, and there were a lot of really great stuff that we had no care for. Really nice furniture, really nice this, really nice that. The high ticket item, not so much, but really interesting things we were more interested in. So they came in and we went through everything. And this one loft that had all this really interesting stuff, Basquiat went nuts over the art stuff. So I said, it's all yours. You got that little loft there and the building downtown with me. And so we'll get Mike to load a truck up and take that down there, right? So he was in seventh heaven. I mean, he had these cards of really nice material. And he had a jacket he could stick 50 of those cards in, and the other pocket over here, he loved decoupage. He had these decoupage pencils. And so we would be working, and he, hey, hold on to this, saw that, do the, forget it. He would just be there sketching away. The best he could do was stand on the ladder so I wouldn't fall off, right? And that's something. And I had him wear the tool belt, so I could just, instead of having to find the tool, he was like my tool caddy, right? So anyway, I tell you this story to get you to this point, where it's the next time I meet David Bowie. So, so OK Harris, I built that place, I wired it, Ivan Karp, anything electric, I go do, right? His mother, his this, his that, other friends. And this is how I had clients. And this is how, whatever I wanted, I got, because I was the sought after. I was the mystic artist electrician, right? So we are every time lighting technology changes, I tell Ivan, they got these new lights, and now they got this stuff called track light, right? And they got these new lights that will make these paintings really pop. And so he goes, okay. So bottom line, I'm in there and I'm there with Samuel, right? And I'm, up on the ladder, putting up track, and Samuel's just he's sitting on the ladder, so won't he's something on a cart, and then he just flips it on the floor and drives on the, he's just driven, just, right? And so I'm there, and then all of a sudden, my ladder isn't as secure as it was when he was sitting. I look down, Andy Warhol, and there's Ivan Karp and Samo. And they're looking at, they picked up all the cards that he threw on the ground, and they're looking at him, and they're amazed. And I've known Andy Warhol a long time up to that point. And again, he was a person, I met him when I was about 16 because I was in an electric shop across the street from his factory. His manager came in, I need an electrician. And the guy said, he's your boy. Went over, that's how I met Andy Warhol. Put in a new service, did a whole bunch of stuff. Then when I started doing nightclubs, I kept meeting Andy Warhol, when I had a piece in the Whitney Annual, and I built all these art things when I was Ivan Karp's main man, so Andy would be everywhere. And what he liked about me is that I knew him really well. I was a really good photographer. I had a career as a photographer. He liked photography and filmmaking, and I was doing that. And I would, the first time I wired his because he wanted to make movies, and he kept blowing fuses because he just had too many lights. And I basically put in a whole service for his lighting, and because he would have his silk screen dryer and his movie lights on at the same time, he'd blow the lights for the whole loft. So I fixed that and said, if you're going to make movies, here, let's make a little studio here for the movies. And I put up lights where he didn't have to, they were all set up for him. He just had to turn it on and kind of point it or move the bar. And so I kept doing things for him, and I never leaned on him. Oh, I know Andy. When I'd see him, I'd just say, Andy, how you doing? If he came over, wanted to talk to me, I'd go here all night. But I respected who he was, his privacy, and who my little tutelage as the shaman. I was pretty sharp by that time. I had some really amazing teachers, and by the time I was 19, by the time I met the old crone, I had that tutelage of the shaman for the last 10 years. I started when I was around 9. Anyway, Andy really, really appreciated that. He really would be his real self whenever he'd see me, eye to eye. He'd be on the other side of the room. Hey, Andy. And he'd smile, and he'd be sincere, real. That smile was sincere and real. When we talked, he was sincere and real. Whenever he wanted me to do something, he knew I would do it and not lean on it, give him a good price, bing, bang, boom, get done. So, and that was New York. New York was the biggest little town. Everybody knew each other. And if you were good at something, people wanted you to do it. So anyway, I look over there, and there's Andy Warhol, and Ivan and Basquiat, and they are in love with this guy. And basically, I walk over there, and Ivan says, so listen, this guy is not really a great electrical helper. I said, yeah, tell me about it. And then I said, but he is a great artist, Ivan. You need to take him under your wing. I can see that Andy loves this guy. So between you two guys, you can do something with this kid. He really needs it. And he needs a break. I was his first break. I took him off the street. I kind of got him here, right? So that happens. The rest is history, right? And you go look it up. Basquiat, right? Now, they made a movie about Basquiat, right? And so I get called by Andy, hey, they're making a movie about Basquiat, because he'd already, OD'd and died, right? And so this was like in homage of this bright star that burned so bright and then burned out. Anyway, they said, we're having a read through, and we'd love it if you came down because you're part of the story. And I said, really? So, oh, yeah, the movie starts with you. With me? Of course. I said, well, do I play? He said, no, you're not going to play yourself. Give me a break. No. I said, well, who's playing me? He goes, William Dafoe is playing you. I go, hey, that's all right. I like that guy. I saw him in The Last Temptation of Christ. Yeah, okay. That's somebody who should play me. William Dafoe. Okay. So I show up there, and guess who is playing Andy Warhol? David Bowie. And that's the next time I seen him. Now, we corresponded because we were both letter writers. And boy, if my dad hadn't thrown those letters out, they would be worth something today. And I had photographs of the Fillmore East from 1966 until 1970, whenever it closed. And my dad threw them out. That's a whole nother story. Anyway, so that was next and last time I saw Andy Warhol, because not Andy Warhol, David Bowie, right? So here we are, gang. You're all getting tuned up in the Old Crone's Dance Hall, and all the different David Bowies are up on stage playing for you, and we're coming in, right? Everybody's there. We're having a great night's time. So you're going to have at least 8 hours of dancing with David Bowie, listening to this great music, drinking from all three pots. So you're not going to be tired. You're going to have the energy of Zeus and the intellect of Plato. No, Aristotle, and the danceability of James Brown. Hot pants. Miss Fish and all. I just read all of your chats. I love your chats. They make me smile. And I kind of have a photographic and tape recorder in my head, so I'm replaying the story as I reread your chats. It's we have to figure out. Well, people can come look at the YouTube. If they can't do that, I don't know what they're doing. Let's see. But I loved all your chats. Everyone was really right on, and yes, we're all dancing on that dance floor. Spotlight comes out of the ceiling, hits me. There I am. There I am, your Sensei Al Bob, and I'm shaking my hips with you. My legs are tap dancing around. I'm swirling. I love to swirl. I love to spin. I'm a spinner. And I'm spinning amongst all of you. I'm grabbing you and throwing you around with each other, and we're spinning, we're all laughing, we're all under the influence of the teapot number 3, and we're just having the best of best times. And we start doing a congoing. Dun, 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 dun. It's David's birthday, so he's in the front. Dun, 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 dun. And every time we switch our hits, he turns into a different David Bowie. He turns into Ziggy. He turns into Station to Station. He turns into the Frank Sinatra. He turns into the Tony Bennett. He turns into da 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 ooh da 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 da, and we're conga lying out of the dance hall, and we're going down the hallway, and we're going through the coat room. Da, 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 ra, da, 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 ooh, da, 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 ra, di, 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 do, ooh. And there's at the other end from the hallway, you go into the coat room, and at the other end there's a big door. You open it up, and it's the doorway into Shambhala. Ra, da, 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 ra, da, di, di, do, ah. And we dance in the conga line into Shambhala. That's right, '09. No matter how we spin it, there's really only one truth in spirit. We grow from it, learn from it, live and co create with it. Compassionate souls, we will unite our goals. Aho! And every day and every way, we will take the peace of the earth and make it stronger with love's co creation. Hear it. Please, Father, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as in heaven, as it was in the beginning, is now, ever shall be, forever and ever. Conga line. So there we are, feeling love's co-creation, just shining down upon us. Dancing, swirling, spinning. All of David Bowie's songs are playing all around us, going from one album to the next. Just feeling that love, feeling that essence, feeling that understanding, that together, this is what existence is about. Sharing, caring about all our relations, bringing happiness to everyone, not just some, because there's only so much. No, there's enough for everybody. That's what this birthday party is about. Everyone gets a slice of the cake. Everyone gets ice cream. So you guys having a good time yet? Hmm? You liking the party? So what are you seeing there in Shambhala? It's not just scientists and fancy, but they're every kind of musician. You know, there are Indian shaman playing their drums doing the conga line. There is Mozart playing the conga line. You know, there's Beethoven playing Jimi Hendrix music. Okay, gang. 2 hours, 19 minutes, and 22 seconds. So, that's right, '09. Meaning, this is what life's about. These special moments, they're out of time. That whole story, everything I told you was basically true. It's like the good book said, based kind of on what happened. And pretty much 100% true. And it's, like I said, go see that movie. William Dafoe plays me. And in Brazil, someone once said to me, Al, you got to go see this movie, Brazil by Terry Gilliam. It's amazing. It's Robert De Niro playing you in the future. Because back in the day when Soho became, before it became Soho, it was pretty hard to live in those lofts because they were industrial sites. And most of the current in those buildings were built in the 1870s, right? And so the electricity they had in them was DC. Yeah, they had AC in them, but really so anyway, I made rectifiers for everyone and turned it into DC, and they had free electricity because the DC, they could, Con Edison couldn't cut off the DC because it was running the subways. So they had all these big heavy wires going into all these lofts, and they had wooden boxes covered with tar. And yes, they had the AC circuit breakers or fuse boxes, this or that, but they were basically there for industrial use, not for regular use. And so, and some of those old lofts didn't even have that. They were just used as warehouses, so they used the DC for light bulbs. So, that was me, Robert De Niro in the future. Fish, you're so right. I mean, the thing that I, as old as I am, and being the shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist, and I look at, for 30 years, looked at trends, what I realize that nothing changes. The people who are fucked up are fucked up. The people who aren't. And it's a kind of gradating scale. Not everyone's totally fucked up. Just some are a little fucked up. We all have a little fucked up in us, and a lot of us are really, like Buddha humming along, and then there's some of us doing our best. In the middle, if human race wasn't basically good, trying to do the right thing, was empathetic and shared, we would be toast. We wouldn't be here. We would be, I'm back in the days why I work for the corporate guys is that I can't believe this shit. I'm just going to go make some money and have a good time until things go up in a mushroom cloud. Well, I did it for 10 years, and nothing happened, right? And in the last 2 years, it should have happened, but didn't. In the last 8 years of Barack Obama, because he was no saint, he was a scummy. There hasn't been a politician who hasn't been a sick motherfucking scumbag. I can't name one. There are a few that aren't so bad, but they usually end up dead. Think about children. Children are not property to be owned by their parents. You know, that all that a parent can do, a parent can only do two things. A, be a good example. B, keep the kids away from the chainsaw. Other than that, the parent should be learning from the child. Exactly, pretty much. I remember seeing a black and white video from the 1950s talking about how children were independent minds and how they needed to be grown and not just forced into whatever. Yep, pretty much. And why I got to be your sensei, Al Bob. Someone said, how did he get to be that way? Well, bottom line, I was the end of the line of a big Catholic family. I more than fell through their net. I fell into the arms of my grandma who brought me up. And my parents weren't bad people. They were just distracted. So I would see them every now and then when they were in their best. When my parents were at their best, they were really cool. When they were not, I wasn't around. And that's why I did not get damaged. And in all that time I wasn't with my parents, I had these amazing mentors, people like Grandpa Stoll, you know. Yes, children are closer to the source, period. Yep. And that's why when I was doing the homestead thing, I took kids off the street, like Basquiat. I mean, he was turning tricks. Go see that movie. Other than seeing me being played by William Defoe, you can really see. I mean, if I hadn't taken that kid off that street that night, he wouldn't be that person. He wouldn't have made that art. He wouldn't have touched all those people. And I had 125 people go, do you have any kids? And I go, no, but I do have 125 godchildren. There were 125 kids just like him who I took off the street, got him a place to stay, got him a job, fed him, got him, you know, being taken care of and made watch out for them for a good 10 years till I knew they were on their path. Not my path, their path. Every place we go, we have to leave a healing center, right? A thing called CALM, Center for Alternative Living Medicine. And my grandma didn't live too far from Malcolm X's temple, right? He didn't call it. He did call it a mosque, but he also called it a temple. And it was a big, school, right? It was a private school that the neighborhood changed, so it wasn't rich people anymore. But it was built as a rich person's school in the 1940s, so it had that modern look. And again, it was facing south, and it was that whole side of the thing was windows. It was about 6 stories high, and you walked into the lobby, and it was very high ceiling, big windows, all the whole length of this thing. You walked in, and there was like a concierge, right? And they meted you, salam alaikum, right? And are you hungry, brother, sister? Are you hungry? And if you said yes, they had this restaurant. It wasn't like, a slop kitchen. It was a restaurant where you went in. And again, it was kind of a cafeteria restaurant, but it was a restaurant. And, you could get a tray and just fill it up with food, go to a table and eat it and come back and do it again and again. If you were that hungry, you didn't get charged, zip. then they had that side. They had a nutrition center where women could, who were pregnant could be have a nutritionist look after them, and kids, feeding kids what kids need, right? And then there was a kind of daycare center, and then a center where mothers could learn to bring their children up, and not in a Muslim way per se, but I mean, yes, they had that, but in a healthy way, in the way that we're talking about, where you lead by example instead of forcing them, right? And then over here, there was a medical, you don't look too good. How are you feeling? You should go see our doctor. They had like a hospital there, right? And then behind it was an area where you went in and they had like social workers. What you need a job, you need education, you need training, you need this, you need place to stay. And that's what the other 5 floors were above. All of the above. Schools, classes, training, places where we could stay and families could stay and children could. That's what we need when we take the circus on the road in every place we stop. And we are going to, again, umbrella, Humanities Artist Trust International, right? To be funded by all of these corporate blah, blah, blahs, because we want to change them as much as we want to change every little town we go to, right? And then we have the Institute for Aesthetically Adept and Appropriate Technology that has underneath it a thing called the Freely Inquiring Society. We're going to have the Traveling Video Art Circus. And that is our circus to go around. And our first clientele, we will look at every town that needs us the most. And we will find the college that's there. And we will go to their student activity and fund and say, hey, look at this little flyer. We have all the stuff, or entertainment, education, this, that, and we're going to plug your school into your neighborhoods so you can be known as this amazing community-oriented thing. And that's what these colleges can do amazingly if we give them the assistance they need to step up. And that's what the Traveling Video Art Circus. So we videotape it. We're going to make a TV show that is going to be on, whatever one of those cable channels wanted to give us a lot of money, and we can then change them instead of them just being a sewer for entertainment. We can give them, like the History Channel tries to do a pretty good job. All those kind of educational channels, but they're still, being. What happens is they have a great idea. They understand, we have to like touch people's need for this new aesthetic. But then they just get bought out by the corporate structure. What we're going to do is offer this in a total package of this new aesthetic. And we're not going to be bought out by the corporate structure, the hidden hand, the sock puppets, the powers that shouldn't be. No, we're going to use one of Grandma's greater rules. They're going to need us more than we need them. So they will let us inoculate them. You know, how they are shooting poisons and, micro-beaded, semiconductors into our bloodstreams with the flu shot. We're going to do that to the 10th power back. Instead of dealing with them with anger, hate, greed, we're going to give them love. Everything that '09 here keeps saying is right on. Teaching how to plant the seeds so they will grow with the specific information about people. Yep, this is it. This is what we're going to do. And we just keep doing this live chat twice a day. And all of you, it's getting in. And look at '09. I mean, he, she, it. I still love the fact that I have no idea what gender, species, any of you are. I mean, yes, Jane. Well, you could be a guy. Who knows? But, fish, you could, I have no idea. And that's the beauty of this, right? But I don't need to know what gender, species, or whatever. What I can see is your energy. your essence of your love, and that you are stepping up. You know, this is only, I've been doing this since October 15th in this way, and I see the change in all of you. And it's for the good. And you are a cadre. You're not a bunch of individuals spouting off here about your shoes or whether your hairstyle is good. No, or whatever political tribe. No, you guys are not tribal at all, that's the best. We don't want tribal. We are a cadre. We are a group of individuals brought together by love's co-creation. You know? Yep. We will dissolve the illusory separation, true science, no, from panthers, muscles, gardeners, healers. Yep. We're all our relations. We're not any better than each other. We just have skills that we love to practice. And that love is what makes us a master at what we do. Oh, fantastic. Here's our brother who made the video about Anastasia, first book. I love you, buddy. 09. You're the dude, eh? Holy moly. Who'd have known it? I should have. So 09, right? Anastasia is like the next book everyone should be reading, right? And then synthesizing, as you have. I should have guessed. Everything you say is kind of straight up Anastasia. Oh, with a bottle of wine? That was, I finally got that bottle of wine open. It was one of the better bottles of wine I've had. It was just right. I mean, sweet. It was dry. It was everything, And the fact I needed to go buy a corkscrew to do it, it was nice. It's like that anticipation, Anticipation is like almost better than the experience. No, your identity wasn't a lie, Fish. It was just blurry. You just have to put on that telescoping eyeball, and you saw that picture the other night with my my telescoping. Can I find it? No, it's too dark, and I don't have 3 pairs of glasses. What you are isn't a lie. The lie is what people force you to be. That's the lie. But none of that matters, right? What matters is the heart of the matter, keeping your eye on the ball. I felt connections within us all. Exactly. We're all our relations. We're the cadre of the adepts. And all that is the 200 and such. I don't want to call anyone what's that stupid word that they use that you are a subscribe. I don't want to call you. You're my adepts. You're not my subscribers, right? And that doesn't. You're all special for who you are, not that you have a title. I just rather call you adepts than subscribers. Yep. Because that was one of my past lives, and I have a lot of Irish blood in me. My brain is the German rocket scientist. My heart is the Irish bard. Everything from my diaphragm down is the La Dolce Vita Italian boy. Not the Guido either. Yes, I mean you put that corkscrew because you were thinking, good man. But that cork was in there, so I had to get one of those. But it was only $3, and I need a corkscrew. Tell me about it. Having ADHD, anticipation. See, anticipation, fish. How you deal with HDAD? Again, that's the lie. That's the little name they put on you. The anticipation you have, and so this is one of the key little things, Trish, and to everybody else. When people go, oh, I feel anxiety and anticipation. No, you need to turn it around, because once you get into doing something, some of the greatest, why do you think they have advent calendars? All those little doors, 31 little doors to Christmas, till you get your presents. It's to build that anticipation. Anticipate, it's one of the better human character traits in our delusionary world here, because if you can experience anticipation, then you can experience grace, gratitude, forgiveness, appreciation. Exactly. Since we are held in prison in this avatar body, instead of letting the hormones get the better part of you, you use them to make you a better part of it, right? So you're not, if you are exercising, if you are meditating, if you are breathing, and there's so I'm pretty beat up, you know. My endocrinologist keeps saying I'm the healthiest dead guy he knows, because 10, 20 years of being diabetic without doing anything about it, not good. It ate my bones up. It turned my organs into something else, and my hormone system and my vagus nerve. These are all the things that your endocrinology guy looks at, and he's just going, you shouldn't be alive. But you're the healthiest guy I know. How do you do that? I do it because every day now I meditate 5 to 20 times a day. Because every time I feel that pain, that they wanted to give me, a morphine pump and 100 milligrams of OxyContin a day, instead of that, I meditate. And the exercise I do is walking. And I also use Tai Chi and Qigong, because those exercises are an amazing energetic force. It's taking the prana, the Qi, Qigong, Tai Chi, and strengthening it in your body. That's why I'm still alive. That's why I can walk. I mean, guys, see right here, that foot is not attached to this ankle. It's just my tendons and muscles that are holding it there. And I have this little, you know, it's not really a brace. It's more like an ace bandage. That's so if I walk wrong on it or step on a stone or a twig, it won't snap my leg off my foot. So Onein's righteous about engaging the prana and breathing and yoga and stretching. Yep. And grounding. That's what Tai Chi and Qigong both do. They ground. They're all about your Qi. So yeah. Yeah, I hate shoes too, but, I wouldn't be able to walk without them. And, if you were in a place that you can walk, I lived in Australia. I lived with an Aborigines tribe for a year. And these guys wore clothes. They loved looking like cowboys, but they didn't like shoes. So, they walked everywhere. And we were out in the outbacks where there were twigs and branches and stones and spiders and you name it. You could die in a second. And I had these big, boots, so, that the bugs, the snakes couldn't, if they tried to bite me, they would just hit that. But the real deal was I started eating like once I got there, I ate like they did. And so within a week of eating like they did, meaning eating grubs and little plants growing by the side of the stream and being a forager, not even a hunter, a forager, my body stopped smelling like cheeseburgers and Pepsi Cola. And so the bugs didn't want me. I mean, they had more bugs there than you can imagine. All the white people, if you went out in the outback, you'd have, 300-400 insects crawling on you every second of the day. So you got to learn what doesn't work, you change, Failure is a good thing. You learn about shit. And breathing more often, and coffee is a good stimulant. Well, the other side of the coin is, I learned to be a healer and, I had a career at that. And why I was pretty successful at it was that I I muscle tested everyone individually. And I looked at everyone as an individual. And over the thousands of people that I treated, I didn't give any one of them the same thing over, every time. And if they were under my care, every time I'd see them, I'd muscle test. I didn't just give them the same thing because that's what I gave them last time. I muscle tested them again just to see if it needed to be tweaked or a different herb would do better or this or that. And I did that for a good 10 years as a practice in New York. But I didn't, hang out a shield. It was totally people came to me by, other people telling, oh, you should go meet this guy. And I had 100% success rate because I took one person at a time, kept my eye on the ball, and I wasn't thinking about money. I didn't charge anybody anything. But I said, hey, if you want to leave, by the door where you go out, there's a little table, there's a little basket there, put in there, whatever you want, whatever. Not a problem. And people, most of my clientele were well heeled because my office was like a block from Wall Street, from the New York City Stock Exchange. I was on Pearl Street. So, but I also went to other neighborhoods. I had friends who had clinics who were doctors who would say, can you work here a couple of days and talk to, help people get off of drugs, talk to people about their mental problems. There's something going on with this person that I can't, you need to do all that kind of woo-woo stuff you do and I had enough, because I worked at the VA for 2 years, I had enough experience within the medical model because, allopathic medicine, the medical model, has its place, Now it's gone way off the mark because it's totally driven by big pharma and profits. And so, anyway. So you have to get, in touch with yourself first and foremost, and then surround yourself with your cadre who loves you. And, here 09's like the Yerba Mate tea. And, so he's a big tea guy. And the teas that he's talking about, most people would like, but I know what he's talking about. I like them too. But everything has an acquired taste. Now, what he's talking about, breath. Everyone breathes. So you don't have to have an acquired taste for breathing. You just have to breathe 20% more than you normally do and breathe out 30%. Because when you breathe out that 30%, you are eliminating more waste through your breath than you do any other way. Try that white willow bark. Yes, of course. White willow bark is great stuff. I mean, it's it's aspirin, basically, but much better. Oh, you mean you're talking about the stuff? Yes, I used all the goodies you gave me. And, yes. And I love the teas that you gave me, right? And the other thing about the teas, so You gave me a diversity of tea. Love that. And so I didn't like do most people put a tea bag in there and then throw it away. I used each tea, I still have more than half the tea bags you've given me because I use the tea bag over and over and over and over and over and over because within that tea bag, the healing essence, the true healing, the real healing essence is there to the very last essence. And actually, that true healing essence gets stronger and stronger the more you use that tea bag. So, Onai, you gave me, it's like you muscle tested me and gave me everything I needed in that box. Really loved it, loved it, loved it. Well, it depends on how cold. You start out with room temperature. You get in there and you kind of warm it up a little bit, and then you cool it down a little bit, and then you warm it up a little bit and cool it down. And with each pattern of that, you kind of get cooler, right? You don't really get hot. You just get warm. You can get a little warmer, but not hot. And then you get colder and colder. And then you can, actually stand the coldest stuff it gets. I used to live in right on the border of New Hampshire and Massachusetts, right in the foothills of the presidentials there. And I went to this school called Winchendon School for Boys. I went to school with the richest people on earth. These guys had no even concept. I had a roommate whose dad sent him $6,000 as his allowance. And my parents, all the time, I never got an allowance, ever. If I hadn't started working at 9, I never had any money. But oh no, and everyone can't, you know, John still was talking about the people who were talking about piss therapies. Like, everybody's different. Now, the thing is, oh nine, you're in a great example. We put this on the road, the show. We bring all of this to everybody. And because, my little specialty is craniosacral, doing the all the different balancings of the vagus nerve and, visualization. And I'm still a very good shiatsu masseuse. I mean, I haven't lost that talent. And it's like all the other talents I have. I haven't really practiced them in a long, long time. But it's like anything. When you master something, you can go back and do it again. You just got to, tune yourself up a little. But if we take this on the road, man, we can bring all of this to everybody. We can Skullcap, excellent day. And Skullcap would be, and kind of that would be pretty good for anxiety and things of that nature. They're very good nervins. Yes, gentle and firm. That's the way. Gentle and firm, and lead by example. Look at me. You guys have been, leading by example and influencing you, and energetically, bringing you into ceremony. But I don't hit you over the head with a hammer. I don't even tell you to believe in anything. I constantly say, "Don't believe me. Go check it out for yourself." Well, fish. I leaned on the button. Are you magically it went off, and magically it came back on. So, fish, are you indigenous? You native? Because Bureau of Land Management, if you're not part of the tribe, they can get a little They really don't like the tribe of the wannabes, but Fish, I don't think you are. Yes, oh nine. I know. P is for everyone. I've been a practicing user of my own fluids for many years, and then when but not everyone is, and they have to be again gentle, but showing by example. Because the first time I saw somebody drink their piss was a new girlfriend I had, and I'm sleeping we're in her apartment. I'm sleeping in her bed. It's a railroad apartment. The bed's at one end, the bathroom's at the other. And she comes out and she's got the big windows of the street behind her. She's totally naked. She squats. She takes this cup and urinates in it. And, when she left me, I was asleep, but I'm like half asleep and I'm watching her urinate in this cup. Now, I've urinated in cups because I had no other place to urinate in. But then she knocks it back. And it's like, I'm like, that's the first time I ever saw that. I mean, I read about this process, but I never saw anybody do it. Now, here's my new girlfriend doing this. And then she comes over and snuggles me and wants to make out. And I was like, and she goes, so you saw me piss in that glass? I said, yep. And you didn't brush your teeth. And she goes, so what does she do? You'd love this girl. She gets up. She goes, I still got a little left in me. And she urinates in it. And she hands me the cup and says, this is the make or break point of our relationship. I said, but we just started. Isn't the make or break point supposed to be like 3 months from now or a year? She goes, no, drink this. You'd love this girl. Oh, nine. So I was like, okay. And I didn't even hold my nose. I looked down in it and, there wasn't much in there. So it wasn't like, okay. Then I kind of smelled it. And I had been studying with a Chinese doctor, and part of his thing is to smell urine. So I wasn't like, and to, take apart the feces and look at that and see what, the stridents were. So, I wasn't like totally freaked out by the urine. And, I don't think, anyway. So I said, okay, this is the make or break point. And I really like this girl, and she's really smart. And I want to have, I want to be with this girl. And I like her apartment. I have no place to live. Okay, glang, you know. And then I started knocking it back with her. Yes, not only is it see, people don't understand what the mind is. The mind isn't your consciousness. No. The mind is the Rolodex of all of the traumas, all of the fears, all of the angers, and all of the stupid shit people have forced you to believe in. That's what your mind is. Yes, you can age your piss like a fine wine. Now, well, I won't even go there. So, '09, and the rest of you, you all need to start thinking about what your curriculum is going to be. Because when we take the show on the road, we're going to colleges, and we have to basically say, okay, we're here to entertain. We're going to put on a really great show, but we're also going to stick around for a week or two and give classes on things that your students really need to know, like honesty, integrity, health, balance, how to dance, you know. So we all have to make up a curriculum, and we coach it in a way that won't freak people out. And then once we get them in a classroom, and we lock the door, we can hit them with both with the with the real deal. I mean, yes, if you do one of the best things you can do if you do a fast, but see, again, oh nine, you're coming from a place of understanding, knowledge, and balance. Most people like to go into, I have a good buddy who's a great herbalist, and he has great herb stores here in Roanoke. He does a great job. But all these people, I want to have a flat, a quick, what's going to empty me out, and they don't do, and part of a fast, your body needs energy, needs fuel, right? But a fast is good, but your mind has to be, understanding. Get the crap out of your mind first, right? That's where you first have. So you have to have understanding, not, listening to some advertisement. Then you have to study what this is. I mean, you don't go into this by just buying a box, of something. No, you need to understand this. You need to assimilate this. You have to put this into your Akashic record. And that's what I'm trying to teach you guys. Your Akashic record is this great vehicle for understanding stuff that you might want to understand. Yes, we're all toxic. Yes, exactly. Like my Chinese doctor taught me how to sniff pee, Yeah, you're toxic. Your pee is going to be disgusting. But as '09 is saying, even if your pee is, ugh, so what do? The best thing I would do is you take a bit of that pee, put it in a cup, and get yourself some really good water, like distilled water. That would probably be the best. And you start drinking your pee, 3/4 distilled water, 1/4 your pee. And that would get you to a place where you could drink your pee. And then you go from there. Right. And that's why we do our breathing 20% in and 30% out. Because, if you want to drink your pee, the best way is to meditate and expel, because your breath, you expel like something like 100,000 cubic feet of your breath every day. And and if you breathe that extra 30%, you are squeezing out a lot of toxins in your body just with your breath. So that's why you got to approach all this stuff, not from a almost religious standpoint of a belief, but you have to incorporate all of this inside of who you are. So then you can drink your pee, not a problem. '09, it's not a problem for him to drink his pee. When I was hanging out with my sweetie, it was not a problem because I eased into it. Because after I drank that first little bit of her pee, where that was a breaking point, she basically said, okay, this is, we're going to change you in a lot of ways. And we're not going to do it like a sledgehammer. She was the one who showed me how to drink my pee by starting off with, distilled 3/4 distilled water, 1/4 of that. And, within, me, and I wasn't that toxic. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been going out with me. So, but by doing that, within a week or 2 or 3, I had no problem drinking my pee, because I knew what it was before I saw her do it. I read about it. I had teachers who talked about it. I had teachers who actually did it, but, said, hey, you don't have to do it, but, you could do it. And so the woman I lived with was the teacher I let me teach me how to do it. So now '09 is 100% about, and most people, it's so, counter, to anything that they've been taught, but virtually everything they've been taught is how to kill you, when I was a shrink and I want to just kill myself, I said, oh, don't worry about it. Just wait a few weeks, by your diet and everything else you're doing, you'll be dead soon. What do you mean? And I said, yeah. Like early this morning, when I did my morning chat, if anyone heard it, I walked upon these two people, and This one lady was just chattering away to the guy behind the counter. And he was a chatterbox too. He was just chattering away, chatter. Both two chatters. And they wouldn't even listen to her. They weren't even on the same conversation. They were just chatter. And the guy next to her, I thought was her son. And he was so quiet and thoughtful, I thought he was autistic. But then I looked at him energetically and I said, no, he's not. So I said, I realized that she wasn't talking to the counter guy about, business. Like, I want a sandwich. So I went in front of him and I said, it's time for Judge Judy. It's time for Judge Judy. And I started going around in a circle, talking like Raymond of Rain Man. And they were like looking at me stranger and stranger. And the woman first was angry, and then she looked at me with patronizing sympathy. Oh, he's one of those people. Jesus says I had to be nice to him. So I'll be hypocritically, anyway. So then, as I was going around in circles, I just stopped right in front of the guy and say, okay, I want a this kind of sandwich with this kind of bread, with this kind of sauce and extra mayonnaise, more, blah, 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 blah. It was like totally business. And I captured his mind, his little squirrel. He got down, he checked everything off and went off. Didn't even finish the conversation with the woman. Then I turned to her and then said, went back to being Raymond. And then I stopped and said, look in the sky. And she looks up in the sky. And they were chemtrailing the sky for the second round. I mean, they had chemmed early, and it turned the blue sky that I saw in the morning waking up into the silver sky. And now they were adding a whole nother herringbone pattern. And I said, look at that. You'll be dead by the year 2025. And when I said that, her little mind thought that was like 1,000 years from then. But then she said, oh, wait a minute. 2020 is in 2 years. 2025 means 7 years. She goes, I'll be dead? I said, oh, yeah, 95% of America will be dead. She goes, what? I said, oh, yeah, sometime relatively soon, maybe tomorrow. Did you see that thing on the news with the blue flash in New York and it was a transformer? She said, oh, yes. First I thought it was end of times. I said, well, what that was a practice. We're going to be hit with a, electromagnetic pulse either from the sun or from, the Rothschilds, and it will obliterate our electric grid. And then I said, did you know that the Rothschilds hold 90% of all the electric utilities in America and 40% of all the gas utilities, and they're letting them fall into disarray? So at a certain point, that backbone of our support system will just go out. And within 3 weeks of all electricity going, within the first 2 days, there will be no food in the supermarkets. 3 weeks later, 70% of all Americans will be dead. And she was like, and then I just kept hitting her with fact after fact of what she was eating, what's in the air, what's in the this, what's in the that, and she was just. And then she was going, I gotta. I said, you gotta relax, because the only thing that's gonna make a difference in your life is, the the total forgiving love of co-creation of Jesus Christ. Because I saw right away that this girl, because when I said, you'll be dead, she was saying, oh, that's the rapture, right? And that's when I gave her the 411 of what the rapture was going to look like, and that she was going to be part of it. And so then when I told her that the true thing was Jesus Christ's love, she goes, that's right. And so she calmed down, and then she went off, right? So the guy sitting next to me goes, that was freaking amazing. I said, he goes, what are you? And I said, you got some time? You want to have a seat? Let me eat my sandwich, and we can talk. So we had this really long conversation. He was about 35, and he had been, there's a guy who wrote a book, Economic Hitman, right? For the John, whatever his name is. Really good book. You guys should read it, right? But this guy was it, and he decided instead of going the full Monty at it, that he wasn't going to do that anymore. That he was going to be the righteous guy because he grew up in a environment in Asia and Ireland. His father worked at Christian camps, non-denominational Christian camps, right, like Methodists, and so he had a pretty strong backbone of integrity and wanted to, and we talked about the alternative aesthetic, and I gave him my card with the Dreamy Dreamland address on it, and he said he'd watch. And so the more people we can find like him, the more we can. So I spent a good 3 hours talking to him, and he said, no one ever talks to me, but you, and he goes, and what I really like about our conversation is it's been a conversation. Yes, you've told me a lot of stuff, but you've been, and he had it down that he realized that he goes, you're a shaman, aren't you? I said, well, I'm a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist. And he kind of laughed and he said, I know what you're doing. I kind of know all those things and I just haven't put them all together. I said, well, hang out with me and you'll be one of them, like Jiminy Cricket. I'm looking at your energetics, you're on the right track, kiddo. And actually, you're doing better than I did when I was your age. He goes, how old am I? I said, 32. He goes, I said, what sign am I? And I said, you're a Virgo, September. And he was like, stop it. Yep, what degree? Yep, that's kind of what's going on. And the thing about the apocalypse, we've always been within the apocalypse. Go to the 9th century when the Black Plague was around. That was kind of apocalyptic. Be in the trenches during World War I. That was kind of apocalyptic. Be in Fallujah, when things went south. And that's, my little, the one thing, I'm a stickler for words. So 09 says, it's up to us, our minds, and create an image that unites in truth and love, right? So I would substitute, it is up to us to use our consciousness and create an aesthetic that unites in truth and love. Because image, if you take it back to Sumerian, means, there's, the image, the likeness. It's all about the make-believe. But aesthetic's not. Aesthetic is a process of all of our relations to make a pathos of an integrated consciousness with all our relations. Not an image, because then we'd have all these separate images if we used our mind. Consciousness, we're in that big, lake of the link. Oh, Drake, what sign? Let's see. I have to see your body, but just looking at your energetic through. Now, if you were to take a picture of your hand, the one you write with, both sides, and send it to my, the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail, I could tell you pretty much 80% of the chance. But just by looking at your energy coming through this little screen here, I would say that you're maybe a Scorpio, maybe a Capricorn, maybe a Virgo, maybe Aquarius. But how do I get it to be ubiquitous? That you could just go talk to your neighbor, every one of them deeply. Because every one of your neighbors is all your relations. Every one of your neighbors is you. And when you realize that and not just your neighbors, but your dog, your cat, the earthworm, the fish, the bird, that's when you're ubiquitous. I love that word. I'm a big fan of the right word, and fish, you used it perfectly. But how do I get it to be ubiquitous, meaning all encompassing? And that's, the illusion, the thing about the illusion and the image, and we get to choose and perceive. Well, again, these are words that you really have to parse clearly. So we're living in this illusion world. Do we want to continue to live in this illusion world where, there's not enough for everyone and only that 1/10% owns everything, controls everything? That's the illusion world. Do you want everything to be that image that can fade, that can crack, that can, be, and then you see what's behind it, What we need to choose and perceive is to serve love's co-creation. That's the only way to create this alternative aesthetic. It's not to pick, column A, B, or C from the illusion to make the new aesthetic, the new alternative aesthetic, because it wouldn't be an alternative. It'd be just one of those columns, column A, B, or C, on a whim. Well, if you were to change whim to empathetic intuition, well, then you get closer. Now, there's truth. We can dream living images, Again, we can dream living aesthetic into all our love's co-creation. And we do this, it's just up to how aware are we of this. Exactly, as Buddha says. So, man, what are you? I'm awake. Maybe Pisces? You're a Leo. Holy moly. See, that's why I'd have to look at you. If I saw your face, I could. Because Leos have a certain, human beings are like Mr. Potato Head. There's only so many eyes, noses, mouths, and characteristics. But you kind of have to really get a good cold reading, you have to see the whole ball of wax. You know what Plato said about astrology? It is a wise man who is guided by the stars and a fool who is led by them. Well, that's me, buddy. I'm your little mouse. Maybe your little cheeky monkey. Taurus. I love Taurus. I mean, I like lions too, especially when I'm in my thespian mode. I love hanging with Leos. And some of my best friends, I find that Tauruses make the best of buddies. Three hours and 19 minutes, man. There's two of us. That's it. Okay, guys, it's time for me to go to bed. You guys need to get a room, Um, you guys can't you guys, I mean, you have your own, the little names there. You can figure out where you are and all the above. And I see that you too could, because everybody left, right? So did you have a fun time dancing and partying and hanging out with everybody? Was that good for you all? Like I said, it's a tool. There are certain patterns in it that give a good, like I said, wise man who's guided by the stars, fool who's led by them. You loved it. I'm happy. Yep. Okay, gang. So here we are, 3 hours, 20 minutes, and 14 seconds. A few more seconds, and at 3 hours, there. Oh, I just missed it. I won't wait for a synchronistic moment. I'm just going to say goodnight. I love you guys. See you in the morning. It is going to be Tuesday, or it already is. Good night, y'all.